The scent of betrayal lingered in the rain-soaked Seattle air like copper pennies and broken promises. Luna Ashworth pressed her back against the alley's brick wall, her breath forming crystalline clouds in the October chill as her bones began their familiar, agonizing dance. The transformation always hurt. Every werewolf shifter knew that truth. But tonight, the pain felt like divine punishment. Snap. Her radius bone elongated, sending lightning through her nervous system. Luna bit down on her lower lip until she tasted iron, refusing to cry out. Not here. Not where Dante's security cameras might capture her weakness. 3 hours ago, she'd been Dr. Luna Ashworth, pharmaceutical researcher extraordinaire, the orphan girl who'd clawed her way through medical school on scholarships and sheer determination. 3 hours ago, she believed in fated mates and paranormal romance and the possibility that someone like Dante Blackthorne, billionaire alpha werewolf and CEO of Blackthorne Industries, could love someone like her. Now she knew better. The memory hit her like a physical blow. Dante's Arctic blue eyes, cold as winter moonlight, as he'd spoken the ancient rejection ritual in front of his entire corporate pack. Dante Blackthorne, alpha of the Northwestern Territory, reject you, Luna Ashworth, as my mate. May the moon witness this severing. Her wolf had screamed. Actually screamed. A sound no human throat could make, raw and primal and devastating. The rejection hadn't just broken her heart, it had shattered something fundamental in her supernatural core, leaving her feeling like a ghost haunting her own body. But the worst part? The triumphant smile on Scarlett Vance's perfectly sculpted lips, as Dante had immediately claimed the red-headed marketing director as his chosen mate instead. Scarlett, with her designer suits and predatory laugh, who'd never worked a day in the lab but somehow always knew exactly which research projects would yield the most profitable results. Luna's spine arched as her wolf fought for dominance, silver fur rippling beneath human skin. The transformation was coming whether she wanted it or not, triggered by the emotional trauma of mate rejection, one of the cruelest aspects of werewolf biology. When your fated mate cast you aside, your wolf often went feral with grief, forcing involuntary shifts until the animal side could process the impossible loss. She stumbled deeper into the alley, away from the towering glass monument that housed both Blackthorne Industries and her family's pharmaceutical empire, Ashworth Medical. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd been hiding her true identity for 2 years, working as a lab technician in her own company's research division, all to avoid the corporate politics that had destroyed her parents. And for what? To fall for the one man whose business acquisition strategy included systematically purchasing werewolf territories across the Pacific Northwest? A homeless woman shuffled past the alley's mouth, muttering about rich wolves in sheep's clothing and corporate predators. If she only knew how literally accurate those words were. Luna's phone buzzed with a text from her brother Marcus. How did the presentation go? Did Mr. Blackthorne approve the new lupus research funding? Marcus. Sweet, brilliant Marcus, dying by degrees from a rare genetic condition that caused his immune system to attack his own organs. The experimental treatment Luna had been developing was their only hope, a revolutionary therapy that used concentrated werewolf healing enzymes to repair damaged tissue. She'd been so close to a breakthrough, so close to saving him. And now, without Dante's approval and financial backing, the research would die along with her brother. Her wolf surged forward with violent intensity, and this time Luna couldn't fight it. Her human clothes shredded as her body elongated and reshaped itself, muscles rippling beneath newly sprouted silver fur that gleamed like moonlight on water. But something was wrong, terribly wrong. Her wolf form felt different, more powerful, as if the rejection had somehow unlocked abilities that had been dormant her entire life. She was larger than before, nearly the size of a small horse, with fur so purely silver it seemed to glow with its own internal light. When she looked down at her reflection in a puddle, her eyes shone like molten platinum, not the golden amber of a typical werewolf, but something far rarer. A silver wolf. The realization hit her like a thunderbolt. She'd read about them in the ancient texts during her pharmaceutical research, but they were supposed to be extinct, legendary werewolves who appeared only once per generation, possessing healing abilities so powerful they could literally bring the dead back to life. No wonder Dante had rejected her so publicly. If the Werewolf Council discovered what she was, they'd either worship her as a goddess or dissect her like a laboratory specimen. Silver wolves were too dangerous to exist in the modern world, too valuable to remain free. A sound made her freeze, footsteps approaching the alley with the measured confidence of a predator. She turned, silver fur bristling, and found herself staring into the storm-gray eyes of Dante Blackthorne himself. He'd shed his expensive business suit for dark jeans and a leather jacket that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, but there was nothing casual about his stance. Every line of his body screamed alpha dominance, from the way he held his head to the slight curl of his lips that suggested barely contained fangs. Well, Dante murmured, his voice carrying that same authoritative rumble that had made her pulse quicken during board meetings. It seems the little lab mouse has been hiding some very interesting secrets. Luna's wolf wanted to attack, to leap for his throat and show him exactly what kind of damage a silver wolf could inflict. But her human mind, still functioning beneath the supernatural fury, recognized the hunger in his gaze. He wasn't looking at her like a rejected mate, or even like a threat. He was looking at her like a man who'd just discovered the most valuable resource on Earth. "Transform back, Luna," Dante commanded, his alpha voice carrying supernatural compulsion. "We need to talk." She fought the order for exactly 3 seconds before her wolf, still genetically programmed to obey an alpha despite the rejection, forced her back into human form. Luna crouched naked in the alley, using her long dark hair to preserve what modesty she could while glaring up at the man who'd just destroyed her life. "Talk," she spat, her voice hoarse from the transformation. "What's left to say? You made your choice very clear in front of your entire pack." Dante shrugged out of his leather jacket and held it out to her, his expression unreadable. "Put this on. And for the record, that wasn't a choice, it was a strategic move to keep you alive." Luna stared at him in shock, making no move to take the jacket. "What are you talking about?" "The Werewolf Council has been monitoring Ashworth Medical for months," Dante said quietly, his storm-gray eyes never leaving her face. "They know about your research into werewolf healing enzymes, and they've been watching you specifically. When they discovered you were my mate, they gave me an ultimatum. Reject you publicly and let them believe you're powerless, or watch them disappear you entirely." The words hit Luna like a physical blow. "You're lying." "Am I?" Dante stepped closer, and she caught his scent, pine forests and midnight rain, with underlying notes of leather and danger that made her newly awakened silver wolf purr despite everything. "Why do you think Scarlett has been asking so many questions about your research lately?" "She's not just my marketing director, Luna. She's a council operative, and she's been reporting your every move back to her handlers." Luna's mind reeled as pieces of a larger puzzle began clicking into place. Scarlett's mysterious appearances in the lab during off hours. The way certain research samples had gone missing just before major breakthroughs. The strange questions about Luna's family history and whether she'd ever experienced unusual healing incidents. "Even if that's true," Luna whispered, finally accepting the jacket and pulling it around her shivering form, "rejecting me in front of the entire pack was still the cruelest thing you could have done. Do you have any idea what it feels like to have your mate publicly cast you aside?" Something dark and pained flashed across Dante's features. "I know exactly what it feels like," he said softly. "Because rejecting you near killed me too. The mate bond doesn't care about strategy or survival, Luna. It only knows that I just severed the most important connection of my supernatural existence." She could see the truth in his eyes, the same devastating pain she'd been carrying, the same sense of fundamental wrongness that came from fighting against nature itself. But understanding his motivations didn't make the betrayal hurt any less. "So, what now?" Luna asked, clutching the jacket tighter around herself. "The council thinks I'm neutralized, but you and I both know what I am. Silver wolves don't just disappear because their mates reject them." Dante's smile was sharp and predatory. "Now we're going to give them exactly what they want. A broken, powerless she-wolf who poses no threat to their political games." And while they're congratulating themselves on their success, you and I are going to take down their entire operation from the inside. And why would I trust you? Luna demanded. You just proved you'll sacrifice anyone to protect your corporate empire. Because, Dante said, stepping close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, I'm about to give you something no council operative would ever risk. The truth about who you really are and why your pharmaceutical research has the power to reshape the entire supernatural world. Luna stared up at him, caught between fury and fascination. What are you talking about? Dante's eyes began to glow with alpha power, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ancient secrets. You're not just a silver wolf, Luna. You're the last surviving heir to the Ashworth bloodline, the only family in werewolf history whose members could synthesize supernatural healing compounds through their own bodies. Your parents weren't killed in a car accident like you've always believed. They were murdered by the council to prevent them from passing their abilities to the next generation. The words hit Luna like a tidal wave, rewriting everything she thought she knew about her past. That's impossible. Is it? Dante reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. Hospital records from your birth. DNA analysis linking you to the Ashworth pharmaceutical patents. Even your brother's genetic condition isn't natural. It's a targeted bioweapon designed to force you to develop the very healing compounds the council wants to steal. Luna's legs gave out, and she sank to the wet pavement as the implications crashed over her. Marcus's illness. Her instinctive understanding of werewolf biology. The way her research always seemed to break through exactly when it seemed impossible. She wasn't just a scientist studying supernatural healing. She was a living laboratory, bred and shaped by forces she'd never even known existed. Why tell me this? She whispered. Why risk everything to give me the truth? Dante knelt beside her in the filthy alley, his alpha confidence replaced by something rawer and more human. Because 3 months ago, I walked into a research lab expecting to conduct a routine business meeting, and instead I met my fated mate. And despite every logical reason to stay away from you, despite knowing it would put both our lives in danger, I fell in love. Luna's breath caught. Dante. The rejection was theater, Luna. Necessary and horrible, but just a performance to buy us time. His storm-gray eyes burned with intensity. But my feelings for you? The way you make my wolf sing just by existing? That's the realest thing I've ever experienced. Before Luna could respond, the distant sound of howls echoed through the Seattle night. Long, mournful calls that seemed to be getting closer. Dante's head snapped up, his nostrils flaring as he tested the air. Council hunting party, he growled, already pulling Luna to her feet. They're tracking your silver wolf scent. We need to move. Now. Where can we go? Luna asked, her heart hammering as the howls grew louder. If they're council operatives, they have resources we can't even imagine. Dante's smile was all predator. They have resources, but we have something better. He pulled out his phone and sent a rapid text, then looked at Luna with fierce determination. We have your pharmaceutical empire, my corporate connections, and a mate bond they think is broken. They're about to learn that the most dangerous werewolves are the ones who have nothing left to lose. A black SUV rounded the corner at the end of the alley, its headlights cutting through the darkness like searching eyes. Dante grabbed Luna's hand, and she felt the electric shock of skin-to-skin contact, their mate bond flaring to life despite the public rejection, proving that some connections ran deeper than ancient rituals. Trust me, Dante whispered as he led her toward a hidden fire escape. I know I've given you every reason not to, but I need you to trust me one more time. Luna looked into his storm-gray eyes and saw desperation, determination, and something that looked dangerously like love. Behind them, the howls were getting closer, and she could hear the SUV's engine growling like a mechanical predator. She thought about Marcus, dying in his hospital bed while their enemies used his illness as leverage. She thought about her parents, murdered for the same gifts that now flowed through her silver wolf bloodline. And she thought about the mate bond humming between her and Dante like a live wire, promising that together they might be strong enough to fight back. Okay, Luna said, squeezing his hand as they climbed toward the roof. Let's give the council a war they'll never forget. The secret elevator descended 60 floors beneath downtown Seattle, carrying Luna and Dante into a world she'd never known existed. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on reinforced concrete walls marked with symbols that looked suspiciously like territorial claw marks, and the air itself seemed to thrum with supernatural energy. "Welcome to the real Blackthorne Industries," Dante said as the elevator shuddered to a stop. The part that doesn't appear on any corporate organogram. The doors opened to reveal what looked like a fusion between a high-tech command center and an ancient werewolf den. Massive screens displayed real-time data about supernatural activity across the Pacific Northwest, while carved wooden totems depicting wolf spirits stood guard beside million-dollar computer servers. The scent of sage and pine mixed with the ozone smell of advanced electronics, creating an atmosphere that was simultaneously modern and primal. Luna stepped out of the elevator, still wearing Dante's leather jacket over her shredded clothes, and immediately felt the weight of multiple gazes. A dozen werewolves in various stages of human and wolf form turned to stare at her, their eyes reflecting the blue glow of the computer screens. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dante announced to the assembled pack, his alpha voice carrying absolute authority, "meet Luna Ashworth. Some of you know her as the pharmaceutical researcher who's been developing breakthrough healing compounds. What you don't know is that she's also a silver wolf and the last surviving member of the Ashworth bloodline." A collective intake of breath rippled through the room. Luna felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and something that might have been pride. For 26 years, she'd been nobody special, an orphan who'd worked twice as hard as everyone else just to survive. Now, apparently, she was supernatural royalty. "Sir," said a woman with steel-gray hair and the bearing of a military officer, "with respect, bringing her here violates every security protocol we've established. If the council discovers this location..." "The council already knows about this facility, Director Hassan," Dante interrupted smoothly. "They've known for months. The question is whether we continue playing defense or finally go on the offensive." Director Hassan's eyes narrowed. "What exactly are you proposing?" Dante moved to the central computer terminal, his fingers flying over the keyboard with practiced efficiency. Images filled the massive wall screens, corporate organizational charts, pharmaceutical research data, and what looked like a complex family tree stretching back several generations. For the past 5 years, the Werewolf Council has been systematically infiltrating supernatural-owned businesses, Dante explained, his voice taking on the cadence of a corporate presentation. "They've placed operatives in key positions at companies like Ashworth Medical, using legitimate business structures to gain access to supernatural resources and research." Luna studied the screens, her scientific mind automatically analyzing the data patterns. "They're not just stealing research," she realized aloud. "They're engineering specific discoveries. Look at the timing of these breakthrough announcements. They correspond exactly with lunar cycles and major supernatural events." "Exactly." Dante's approval sent an unwelcome flutter through her chest. "The council isn't just profiting from supernatural abilities. They're weaponizing them. Your research into werewolf healing enzymes isn't academic curiosity, Luna. It's the foundation for a bioweapon that could control every shifter in North America." The implications hit Luna like a physical blow. "My brother's condition if they're using it to force me to develop healing compounds. Then they're essentially torturing a 17-year-old boy to turn his sister into their personal pharmaceutical factory," Director Hassan said grimly. "Which means we have multiple reasons to shut them down permanently." Luna felt her silver wolf stirring beneath her skin, responding to the rage building in her chest. The idea that Marcus's suffering was deliberate, that his pain was being used as leverage against her, made her want to shift right here in the underground command center and hunt down every council member she could find. "Control it," Dante murmured, appearing beside her with supernatural speed. His hand settled on her shoulder, and immediately the wolf fire in her blood began to cool. "I know you want to tear them apart, so do I. But we need strategy, not just fury." "Strategy?" Luna turned to face him, very aware of how his proximity made her pulse quicken despite everything between them. You mean like publicly rejecting your mate as part of some elaborate corporate espionage scheme? A muscle in Dante's jaw tightened. That wasn't corporate espionage. That was survival. The council had operatives positioned throughout my pack hierarchy, including Scarlet, who's been reporting our every move back to her handlers. If I'd claimed you as my mate publicly, they would have moved against both of us immediately. And now? Luna asked, studying his storm-gray eyes for any hint of deception. Now they think you're neutralized, and I'm completely focused on my new chosen mate, Dante said, his voice carrying hints of disgust when he mentioned Scarlet. Which gives us the element of surprise. Director Hassan cleared her throat. With respect, sir, how exactly do we leverage that surprise into actionable intelligence? The Council's security protocols are legendary. Dante's smile turned predatory. Simple. We're going to stage a hostile takeover. He moved back to the central terminal, pulling up new screens that showed corporate financial data and stock market analysis. Luna found herself drawn to the information despite her emotional turmoil, her scientific mind automatically cataloging patterns and connections. Ashworth Medical is currently undervalued by approximately 40%, Dante explained, largely because the market doesn't understand the true applications of their supernatural research. If Luna were to suddenly inherit her family's controlling stake and merge it with Blackthorne Industries, we'd create the largest supernatural pharmaceutical empire in North America, Luna finished, her eyes widening as she understood the scope of his plan. But I can't inherit anything. Legally, I'm nobody, just an orphan with no claim to the Ashworth name. Actually, Director Hassan said, consulting a tablet, you can. Your parents' wills were sealed by supernatural court order after their deaths, but if you can prove your identity through DNA testing and demonstrate your inherited abilities. The Silver Wolf transformation. Luna breathed. That's why it manifested tonight. The rejection trauma triggered abilities that had been dormant since childhood. Dante nodded grimly. Silver wolves are genetically programmed to manifest their full powers during times of extreme emotional distress. It's a survival mechanism. When the pack structure fails them, they become strong enough to survive alone. Luna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the underground facility's temperature. You're talking about using my parents' murder and my brother's suffering as the foundation for a corporate merger. How is that different from what the council is doing? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Around the command center, she could feel the pack members watching their alpha's response, measuring his character in real time. Dante stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes and smell the pine and leather scent that made her wolf purr with recognition. The difference is choice, he said quietly. The council took everything from you, without your consent. I'm offering you the tools to take it back. And what do you get out of it? Luna asked. Don't tell me this is just about justice. You're a billionaire alpha who built an empire through strategic acquisitions. What's your real angle? For a moment, Dante's corporate mask slipped, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. I get the chance to protect my mate, he said simply, even if she never forgives me for how I've handled this so far. The words hit Luna like a physical caress, making her remember the electric feeling of their first meeting 3 months ago. She'd been working late in the research lab, so focused on her latest compound synthesis that she hadn't noticed the visitor until his scent hit her like a tidal wave, pine forests and storm clouds and something indefinably masculine that made her wolf sit up and take notice. Their eyes had met across the laboratory equipment, and Luna had felt something shift in her chest like the final piece of a puzzle sliding into place. The mate bond had been instantaneous and overwhelming, turning her carefully ordered world upside down in the span of a heartbeat. Sir, said a technician near the surveillance monitors, we're picking up increased council activity across the city. It looks like they're coordinating search patterns. Dante's attention immediately shifted to the screens, his alpha instincts taking over. How many operatives? At least a dozen confirmed, probably more. They're using standard supernatural tracking protocols, scent hounds, and aerial reconnaissance. Luna felt her stomach drop. They're looking for me. Yes, Dante confirmed grimly. which means we need to accelerate our timeline. Director Hassan, initiate phase 1 of the acquisition protocol. I want legal documents prepared for Luna's inheritance claim within 6 hours. And in the meantime? Luna asked, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. Dante's smile was all predator. In the meantime, we're going to pay a visit to your brother. If the council is using his condition as leverage, it's time to remove that weapon from their arsenal permanently. Luna's heart leaped. You can help Marcus? I can do better than that, Dante said, moving to a secured cabinet and withdrawing what looked like a high-tech medical briefcase. I can give you access to supernatural healing techniques that will make your pharmaceutical research look like medieval medicine. He opened the case to reveal vials of shimmering liquid that seemed to glow with their own internal light, along with instruments that looked like a fusion between medical equipment and mystical artifacts. Concentrated silver wolf healing essence, Director Hassan explained. We've been developing it based on historical records and theoretical models, but we've never had an actual silver wolf to test it with. Luna stared at the vials, her scientific mind racing with possibilities. This is impossible. The bioactive compounds would deteriorate within hours of extraction. Not if they're preserved using lunar-charged crystalline matrices, Dante said. Supernatural science, Luna. We're not bound by purely human limitations. The implications were staggering. If they could synthesize silver wolf healing essence on a commercial scale, they could revolutionize medicine for both supernatural and human populations. No more children dying from genetic conditions like Marcus's. No more werewolves suffering from rejection trauma or territorial injuries that took months to heal. But it would also make her the most valuable person in the supernatural world, and the biggest target. There's something else, Dante said quietly, his expression growing serious. Something I need you to understand before you make any decisions about trusting me. Luna braced herself. What? My family carries a bloodline curse, Dante said, the words seeming to physically pain him. For 7 generations, every Blackthorne alpha has lost their true mate to violence or supernatural forces. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they all watched their mates die because the universe seems determined to punish our line for some ancient transgression. The revelation hit Luna like ice water. And you think claiming me as your mate will trigger this curse? I know it will, Dante said simply. Which is why the rejection wasn't just about protecting you from the council. It was about protecting you from me. Luna stared at him, understanding finally clicking into place. You're in love with me, but you think loving you will kill me. I don't think it, Dante said, his voice rough with emotion. I know it. The question is whether you're willing to help me find a way to break a 7-generation curse while we're taking down the Werewolf Council and saving your brother's life. Before Luna could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. Red warning lights bathed the underground facility in the color of blood, and every screen simultaneously switched to surveillance feeds showing black SUVs surrounding the building above. Council enforcement teams, Director Hassan reported tersely. They've found us. Dante moved with alpha efficiency, barking orders to his pack while securing the medical case. Initiate lockdown protocols. Evacuate all non-essential personnel through the tunnel systems. And someone get Luna a change of clothes. She can't fight a supernatural war in a leather jacket. Fight? Luna asked, her voice higher than she intended. What happened to strategy and corporate takeovers? Dante's smile was sharp and dangerous. Sometimes the best strategy is reminding your enemies that you're still a predator. His eyes began to glow with alpha power. Besides, they made one critical mistake. Which is, they threaten my mate, Dante growled, his voice carrying undertones that made every werewolf in the facility respond with involuntary shivers of recognition. And I don't care how many ancient curses or council operatives stand in my way, nobody hurts what's mine and lives to tell about it. Luna felt her silver wolf responding to his alpha call, power flowing through her veins like liquid moonlight. For the first time since the rejection, she felt like herself again, not a victim or a research asset, but a predator in her own right. Then let's show them what happens when they corner a silver wolf and her alpha, Luna said, her eyes beginning to glow with the same platinum light that had marked her transformation. It's time the council learned that some mates are worth going to war for. The hospital's fluorescent lights cast sickly shadows across Marcus Ashworth's pale features as Luna slipped through his room's window using supernatural stealth techniques Dante had taught her during their escape from the council's assault on the underground facility. Her 17-year-old brother looked smaller than ever against the white hospital linens, his breathing labored and his skin carrying the gray pallor that meant his immune system was losing the war against his own organs. "Luna?" Marcus's voice was barely a whisper, but his eyes brightened when he saw her. "How did you get in here?" Visiting hours ended at 9. "Perks of being part werewolf," Luna said softly, settling into the chair beside his bed. She didn't mention that she was now a fugitive from a supernatural shadow organization that had been manipulating his illness for their own purposes. Some truths were too dangerous to share, even with family. "Did Mr. Blackthorne approve your research proposal?" Marcus asked, struggling to sit up straighter. "Please tell me he's going to fund the treatment trials." Luna's heart clenched. Marcus still believed in the normal world, the one where medical research followed ethical protocols, and people like Dante Blackthorne were just wealthy businessmen instead of alpha werewolves fighting ancient curses. How could she explain that his condition wasn't a genetic lottery, but a deliberately engineered bioweapon? "It's complicated," Luna said, reaching into the medical bag Dante had given her. "But I brought you something that might help." She withdrew one of the glowing vials of silver wolf healing essence, the liquid inside seeming to pulse with its own heartbeat. Marcus stared at it with the fascination of someone who'd spent his entire short life surrounded by experimental medications. "What is it?" he asked. "Something new," Luna said carefully. "A concentrated healing compound derived from alternative sources. I need you to trust me, Marcus. This could change everything for you." Marcus met her eyes, and Luna saw their father's intelligence looking back at her, the same brilliant mind that had built Ashworth Medical into a pharmaceutical empire before his mysterious death in a car accident that Luna now knew had been murder. "You've been different lately," Marcus observed. "Stronger somehow. And you smell like pine forests and lightning storms." Luna's breath caught. "Marcus. I've always been able to sense things other people couldn't," Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger despite his physical weakness. "Strange auras around certain doctors, weird energy signatures from some of the medical equipment. I think whatever's wrong with me isn't entirely human, is it?" The question hung in the air between them like a loaded weapon. Luna thought about Dante's warnings, about the council operatives who were undoubtedly monitoring hospital communications, about the bloodline curse that made loving her dangerous for everyone she cared about. Then she looked at her dying brother and made a choice that felt like jumping off a cliff. "No," Luna said quietly. "It's not entirely human, and neither are we." She told him everything. The Werewolf Council, their parents' true fate, the silver wolf transformation that had unlocked abilities she'd never known she possessed. Marcus listened with the calm attention of someone who'd suspected the world held more mysteries than most people imagined, asking occasional scientific questions that proved he was processing the information rather than rejecting it. "So this healing essence," Marcus said when she finished, gesturing to the glowing vial, "it's synthesized from your own supernatural abilities." "Partially," Luna confirmed. "But Marcus, taking it will change you. If you have dormant werewolf genetics, and given our family history, you probably do, this could trigger a transformation." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at the vial with the same intensity he'd once applied to advanced physics problems. Finally, he looked up at Luna with a smile that reminded her of their father. "You know what the worst part of dying is?" Marcus asked. "It's not the pain or the treatments or even the fear. It's knowing that I'll never get to see what comes next. I'll never know if humanity develops faster than light travel, or discovers life on other planets, or figures out how to live in harmony with supernatural species that apparently exist." Luna felt tears prick her eyes. "Marcus." "I want to see what comes next, Luna," Marcus said firmly. "Even if it means becoming something other than human. Especially if it means I can help you fight the people who murdered our parents." Luna uncapped the vial with trembling fingers, the healing essence immediately filling the hospital room with the scent of moonlight and pine forests. "Are you sure? Once you take this, there's no going back." "I've been dying for 3 years," Marcus said, accepting the vial with steady hands. "This is the first chance I've had to really live." He drank the silver wolf essence in one smooth motion, and immediately his body began to convulse. Luna grabbed his hand, feeling the mate bond she shared with Dante suddenly flare to life, as if responding to the supernatural energy now coursing through her brother's system. "Luna?" Dante's voice echoed in her mind, clear as a phone call despite the miles between them. "What's happening?" "I can feel your power signature spiking." The telepathic connection was new, another ability unlocked by her silver wolf transformation, but Luna instinctively understood how to use it. Marcus took the healing essence. "Something's wrong." "Wrong how?" Dante's mental voice carried the sharp edge of alpha concern. Luna watched in horror as Marcus's body temperature spiked and his heart rate jumped to dangerous levels. The hospital monitors were screaming with alarms, but she could hear footsteps in the hallway, medical staff responding to the emergency. "His body's rejecting the essence," Luna reported, fighting panic. "His human genetics aren't compatible with the supernatural compounds." "Get out of there," Dante commanded. "If council operatives are monitoring the hospital, they'll investigate any unusual supernatural activity." "I'm not leaving my brother." "Luna." "I said I'm not leaving him." Luna's mental shout was powerful enough to make Dante's presence in her mind recoil. She placed both hands on Marcus's chest, feeling her silver wolf abilities responding to his distress. Healing energy flowed from her palms into Marcus's convulsing form, but instead of the gentle warmth she'd experienced during her research, this felt like channeling lightning. Her brother's genetics were fighting the werewolf transformation, creating a supernatural conflict that could kill him if she couldn't find a way to balance the competing forces. The hospital room door burst open, admitting 2 nurses and a Dr. Luna didn't recognize. But when the unfamiliar doctor's eyes flashed gold in the fluorescent lighting, she realized this wasn't a coincidence. "Step away from the patient," the doctor ordered, his voice carrying supernatural compulsion that made Luna's human mind want to obey automatically. "Council operative," Luna realized aloud, her silver wolf responding to the threat by flooding her system with protective aggression. The fake doctor smiled, revealing fangs that definitely weren't regulation medical equipment. "Very good. I'm Dr. Voss, and I've been monitoring young Marcus's condition for quite some time." Imagine my surprise when his biosignature suddenly spiked with supernatural energy. The 2 nurses moved to flank Luna, their own eyes beginning to glow with predatory light. Luna realized she was trapped, 3 council operatives between her and the exit, her brother dying on the hospital bed behind her, and Dante miles away dealing with his own supernatural crisis. "What do you want?" Luna demanded, keeping her hands on Marcus's chest to maintain the healing connection. "Simple," Dr. Voss said, pulling out a syringe filled with something that looked like liquid shadow. "You're going to come with us voluntarily, and in exchange, we'll provide your brother with medical care that will keep him alive indefinitely." "Indefinitely?" Luna's eyes narrowed. "Not cured. Just kept alive as leverage against me." "You're learning," Dr. Voss approved. "The council has invested considerable resources in your family's genetic potential. We're not about to let our investment die due to your sentimental attachment to obsolete concepts like medical ethics." Luna felt Marcus's pulse steadying under her hands as her healing energy finally found the right frequency to balance his supernatural transformation. But she could also sense that the process was far from complete. He would need hours of continuous treatment to safely integrate his new werewolf abilities. "I need time," Luna said. "Whatever you're planning, my brother dies without immediate supernatural medical intervention." Dr. Voss consulted his watch with the air of someone accustomed to negotiating life and death situations. "You have 5 minutes to stabilize him. Then you come with us, or we withdraw life support and let nature take its course." "And if I stabilize him and refuse to come?" "Then we kill everyone in this hospital wing and frame it as a terrorist attack," Dr. Voss said matter-of-factly. Supernatural law is quite clear about eliminating witnesses to unauthorized transformations. Luna's silver wolf snarled with fury, but her human mind recognized the tactical reality. She was outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting to save her brother's life while protecting innocent humans who had no idea they were caught in a supernatural war. Dante, she called mentally, I need backup. Hospital room 412, Seattle General. 3 council operatives and about 50 innocent humans in the immediate area. On my way, Dante's response was immediate and grim. Hold them off for 10 minutes. I don't have 10 minutes. Then make them. Luna felt the mate bond between them flare with shared determination, and suddenly she understood what Dante meant. She might not be able to fight 3 trained council operatives, but she had advantages they didn't expect. Dr. Voss, Luna said sweetly, never stopping the healing energy flowing into Marcus. Before I agree to anything, I have one question. Which is? Luna smiled, letting her eyes begin to glow with silver wolf power. Did you really think I was stupid enough to walk into your facility without a plan? Dr. Voss's expression shifted from confident to concerned. The rejection ritual severed your mate bond. You shouldn't have access to alpha-level abilities. Shows what you know about silver wolf biology, Luna said, her voice carrying new harmonics that made the hospital equipment resonate like tuning forks. We don't derive our power from mate bonds. We derive our power from defending what we love. She released 6 months of suppressed rage and fear in a single supernatural pulse that shattered every piece of glass in the hospital room and sent all 3 council operatives flying backward into the walls. Emergency lighting kicked in as the main power grid overloaded, bathing everything in pulsing red light that made Luna's silver fur seem to glow like molten metal. Marcus gasped, his eyes flying open as the healing energy finally completed its work, revealing irises that now held flecks of amber gold, the mark of a successful werewolf transformation. Luna, Marcus whispered, his voice stronger than it had been in years. What did you just do? Something probably very stupid, Luna admitted, helping him sit up as alarms blared throughout the hospital. Can you walk? I feel like I could run a marathon, Marcus said wonderingly, staring at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. Is this what being healthy feels like? It's what being a werewolf feels like, Luna corrected, pulling him toward the window. And right now, we need to run before. Dr. Voss rose from the rubble of the destroyed hospital room, his professional facade replaced by something ancient and predatory. Enough games, he snarled, his form beginning to shift into something that was part wolf, part shadow, and entirely unnatural. If you won't come willingly, we'll take what we need from your corpse. Luna pushed Marcus behind her, her own transformation beginning as silver wolf power flooded her system. But before either of them could fully shift, the hospital window exploded inward in a shower of glass and moonlight. Dante Blackthorne landed in the center of the room in full alpha wolf form, 8 feet of midnight black fur and supernatural fury that made the air itself seem to crackle with electricity. His storm gray eyes found Luna immediately, and she felt the mate bond slam back into place with enough force to make her gasp. Miss me? Dante's mental voice carried dark amusement as he placed himself between Luna and the council operatives. You have terrible timing, Luna replied, but relief flooded through her as his familiar scent filled the room. Actually, Dante said, bearing fangs that could shred steel, my timing is perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to the new CEO of Ashworth Medical. Dr. Voss laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Impossible. Luna Ashworth has no legal claim to. Luna Ashworth doesn't, Dante interrupted, his alpha voice carrying enough power to make the hospital's structural supports groan. But Luna Blackthorne, my publicly acknowledged mate and business partner, has every legal right to claim her family's pharmaceutical empire. Luna stared at him in shock. What are you talking about? You rejected me in front of your entire pack. Dante's wolf form shimmered as he shifted back to human, standing naked and magnificent in the ruins of the hospital room. I rejected Luna Ashworth, pharmaceutical researcher and unknown quantity. I never said anything about rejecting Luna Blackthorne, Silver Wolf and co-owner of the largest supernatural medical empire in North America. Dr. Voss's expression shifted from confident to alarmed. The council will never recognize. The council doesn't have a choice, Dante said, producing a legal document from somewhere despite his lack of clothing. Emergency mate bonding and corporate merger, filed simultaneously with supernatural and human courts exactly 37 minutes ago. Legally, Luna and I are now mated partners in both the supernatural and business senses. Luna felt her world tilt on its axis. You filed emergency legal documents without consulting me? I filed emergency legal documents to save your life, Dante corrected. The council can't target you for your abilities if those abilities are legally owned by a mated pair rather than an individual. Corporate supernatural law is very specific about community property rights. Marcus, who had been listening to this exchange with growing amazement, suddenly started laughing. "Oh my God," he said, his voice carrying new werewolf harmonics, "you just hostile takeovered our enemies using supernatural contract law." "It's what I do," Dante said simply, then turned to the council operatives with predatory focus. "Now, Dr. Voss, would you like to explain to your handlers how you lost control of the most valuable supernatural asset in North America because you underestimated the power of corporate paperwork?" Dr. Voss's form wavered between human and wolf, uncertainty replacing his earlier confidence. "This isn't over, Blackthorne. The council has resources you can't imagine. And we have something better," Luna said, stepping up beside Dante and feeling the mate bond sing with renewed strength. "We have each other, and a brother who's apparently inherited some very interesting abilities, and a really good legal team." She looked at Marcus, who was staring at his hands as small sparks of healing energy danced between his fingers. "Ready to help us take down the people who murdered our parents?" Marcus grinned, his new werewolf instincts making his smile sharp and dangerous. "I've been ready for 3 years. Now I'm finally strong enough to do something about it." As sirens wailed in the distance and the council operatives retreated through supernatural shadow portals, Luna realized that everything had changed in the span of a single night. She had her brother back, her mate beside her, and enough legal firepower to challenge the supernatural establishment that had destroyed her family. But she also had a 7-generation curse hanging over her head, a war brewing with forces that had been manipulating werewolf society for decades, and the growing suspicion that her silver wolf abilities were more powerful and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The real battle was just beginning. The emergency board meeting of Ashworth Medical convened at 3 a.m. in the company's gleaming downtown conference room, 50 floors above the Seattle streets where Luna had first transformed into her silver wolf form. Luna sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, wearing a charcoal business suit that Dante had somehow procured in her exact size, her hair pulled back in a severe bun that couldn't quite hide the supernatural glow in her platinum-colored eyes. Around the table, 12 board members tried very hard not to stare at the woman who had apparently risen from the dead to claim her family's pharmaceutical empire. Most of them were human, but Luna's enhanced senses could detect at least 3 werewolves and something that might have been a vampire trying to pass for a corporate executive. "Ladies and gentlemen," Luna began, her voice carrying new harmonics that made everyone in the room straighten unconsciously, "I'm sure you're all wondering how an orphan lab technician suddenly acquired the legal authority to call an emergency board meeting." Scarlett Vance, still playing her role as Dante's supposed chosen mate, leaned forward with predatory interest. "We're all very curious about your transformation, Dr. Ashworth, particularly the supernatural elements that seem to have manifested so dramatically." Luna smiled, letting a hint of silver wolf power leak into her expression. "I'm sure you are, Ms. Vance. Especially since your council handlers are probably very disappointed that their carefully orchestrated plan has been disrupted." The temperature in the conference room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Scarlett's face went carefully blank, but Luna caught the slight flare of her nostrils as fear scent spiked in the air. "I'm not sure what you're implying," Scarlett said carefully. "I'm not implying anything," Luna replied. I'm stating directly that you're a Werewolf Council operative who's been embedded in this company to monitor and manipulate supernatural research. Your real name is Scarlet Volkov. You were recruited by the Council at age 16, and your mission parameters include eliminating any threats to Council hegemony in the pharmaceutical sector. Scarlet's mask slipped entirely, revealing the cold calculation underneath. Prove it. Luna nodded to Marcus, who had been quietly working on a laptop at the far end of the conference table. Her brother, who looked healthier than he had in years thanks to his successful werewolf transformation, pressed a key, and the room's presentation screens filled with documents, photographs, and financial records. Swiss bank accounts tied to council front organizations, Marcus announced, his voice carrying new confidence. Communication logs with known council operatives. And surveillance footage of Ms. Vance entering and leaving restricted research areas without proper authorization. Plus, Luna added conversationally, she smells like fear and guilt, with undertones of the kind of supernatural suppression drugs the Council uses to mask operative identities. I may be new to the Silver Wolf abilities, but enhanced senses are apparently quite reliable. The other board members were looking between Luna and Scarlet with growing alarm. Whatever they'd expected from this emergency meeting, exposure of supernatural espionage probably wasn't on the list. Even if your allegations were true, said Dr. Harrison Wells, the company's chief financial officer, I'm not sure what authority you have to make such accusations. Your parents' estate was settled years ago. Luna reached into her briefcase and withdrew a thick stack of legal documents. Actually, Dr. Wells, my parents' estate was sealed by supernatural court order pending the manifestation of inherited abilities in any surviving heirs. As of last night, those abilities have been confirmed and documented. She slid the documents across the table, watching as the board members passed them around with increasing bewilderment. Legal language was designed to be confusing, but the core message was clear. Luna Ashworth had been legally recognized as the sole heir to her family's pharmaceutical fortune and intellectual property portfolio. This is impossible, Scarlet protested. The council would never allow. The council doesn't get a vote, Dante said, entering the conference room with a kind of presence that made everyone automatically shift to face him. He'd traded his earlier state of supernatural undress for an impeccably tailored black suit that emphasized his alpha bearing. Supernatural inheritance law supersedes council authority in cases involving rare bloodline abilities. He took the seat to Luna's right, and she felt the mate bond hum with satisfaction as their combined presence filled the room with alpha energy. Several of the board members actually whimpered, an involuntary response to being in the presence of mated alphas whose power was reinforcing itself exponentially. Mr. Blackthorne, Dr. Wells said carefully, I was under the impression that you had chosen Ms. Vance as your mate. The public ceremony was quite definitive. Dante's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. The public ceremony was theater, Dr. Wells. Legally and supernaturally, Luna and I completed our mate bonding ritual approximately 4 hours ago. The paperwork has been filed with both human and supernatural courts. Luna felt heat rise at her cheeks as several board members glanced between them with obvious speculation. The mate bonding ritual Dante was referring to had involved a lot more than paperwork. It had required a level of physical and emotional intimacy that Luna was still processing. The memory hit her like a flash of lightning. Dante's hands on her skin, the electric feeling of their supernatural energies intertwining, the moment when their individual wolves had merged into something larger and more powerful than either could achieve alone. It had been transcendent and terrifying and completely overwhelming. Focus. Dante's voice whispered in her mind, carrying amusement and something that felt like possessive satisfaction. We can revisit those memories later. Luna shot him a look that promised retaliation, then turned back to the increasingly uncomfortable board members. The question before us tonight is simple, she announced. Are you going to accept the new leadership structure, or do I need to start implementing my authority as majority shareholder to make personnel changes? What kind of changes? Asked Dr. Patricia Kim, the head of research and development. Luna smiled, and for the first time since her parents' death, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The kind that will revolutionize supernatural medicine while exposing every council operative who's been sabotaging our research for their own political ends. She gestured to Marcus, who began pulling up new presentation slides. For the past 3 years, Ashworth Medical has been on the verge of breakthrough discoveries in supernatural healing compounds. But somehow, critical research data keeps disappearing, promising trials get mysteriously defunded, and our most brilliant researchers suffer unfortunate accidents. The slides showed a pattern of interference that was impossible to ignore, too systematic to be coincidence, too targeted to be random corporate espionage. Tonight, that ends, Luna continued. We're going to complete the research that should have been finished years ago. We're going to develop treatments that will help both supernatural and human populations. And we're going to do it without council interference. Scarlet stood abruptly, her professional mask finally cracking completely. You have no idea what you're dealing with, she snarled, her eyes beginning to glow with supernatural power. The council has been managing supernatural human relations for centuries. You're going to destroy everything we've built. Good, Luna said simply. Because what you've built is a system that profits from suffering while suppressing the very advances that could eliminate that suffering entirely. The confrontation escalated with supernatural speed. Scarlet's form began to shift, revealing the enhanced werewolf physiology that marked her as a council operative. But before she could complete her transformation, Luna stood and released a pulse of silver wolf energy that made every supernatural being in the room freeze. The power felt different than it had at the hospital, more controlled, more focused, carrying the weight of ancient authority that made even enhanced council operatives submit automatically. Luna realized that her abilities were still evolving, growing stronger as she accepted her heritage and embraced her role as a silver wolf. Ms. Vance, Luna said conversationally, her voice carrying enough supernatural compulsion to make Scarlet's partial transformation reverse itself. You're fired. Security will escort you from the building, and if you're discovered on Ashworth medical property again, you'll be arrested for corporate espionage. Scarlet stared at her with undisguised hatred. This isn't over, little wolf. The council doesn't forgive, and we don't forget. I'm counting on it, Luna replied. Because when your handlers come for me, they're going to discover that some prey is more dangerous than the predators who hunt them. After Scarlet was escorted from the building by security personnel who were probably going to need therapy after exposure to that level of supernatural tension, the remaining board members sat in stunned silence. So, Dr. Wells said finally, what happens now? Luna looked around the table at the faces of people who had worked for her parents' company, some of whom had probably been friends with her family before their murder. For the first time in her adult life, she felt like she was home. Now we save lives, Luna said simply. Marcus, show them the silver wolf healing compound synthesis data. Her brother's presentation was brilliant, a comprehensive overview of supernatural medical applications that would have taken human researchers decades to develop. But thanks to Luna's silver wolf abilities and Dante's corporate resources, they could have working treatments in clinical trials within months. The applications are staggering, Dr. Kim breathed, studying the data with scientific fascination. Accelerated healing for trauma patients, immune system enhancement for genetic conditions, even potential applications for neurological disorders. And that's just the beginning, Marcus added, his excitement making his new werewolf nature more apparent. If we can synthesize these compounds at scale, we could eliminate entire categories of human suffering. Luna felt a surge of pride and determination. This was what her parents had died for, the vision of supernatural abilities being used to heal instead of harm, to protect instead of exploit. But as the board meeting concluded and plans were set in motion for the most ambitious medical research program in history, Luna couldn't shake the feeling that they were also painting the largest possible target on their backs. The council would retaliate. Other supernatural factions would want to either ally with or eliminate them. And somewhere in the shadows, the 7-generation curse that had claimed every other Blackthorne mate was waiting for its next opportunity to strike. Second thoughts? Dante asked mentally as they walked toward the executive elevator. Luna looked back at the conference room where her brother was already deep in discussion with the research team about equipment requirements and timeline projections. Then she looked at Dante, whose storm-gray eyes held a mixture of pride, love, and carefully controlled fear. None, Luna replied firmly. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Even if it means fighting forces that have been controlling supernatural society for centuries? Luna smiled, feeling her silver wolf power humming contentedly beneath her skin. Especially then. Some things are worth going to war for. As the elevator carried them toward an uncertain but determined future, Luna realized that she was no longer the orphaned pharmaceutical researcher who'd been rejected and broken just days ago. She was Luna Blackthorne, silver wolf and co-owner of a supernatural medical empire, with a mate who would fight armies for her and a brother whose inherited abilities might be even more remarkable than her own. The council had made one critical error in their calculations. They'd assumed that destroying her family would eliminate the threat to their power structure. Instead, they'd just created the very enemies who would bring their entire organization down. The blood moon hung over Seattle like a crimson eye, casting everything in shades of red that made Luna's silver wolf instincts scream warnings she couldn't quite interpret. She stood in the floor-to-ceiling windows of Dante's penthouse office, watching supernatural energy dance across the cityscape in patterns visible only to enhanced werewolf vision. "It's starting," Luna murmured, pressing her palm against the cool glass. Below, she could see council operatives moving through the streets with military precision, black SUVs and figures that seemed to blend with shadows in ways that defied natural law. "The blood moon amplifies all supernatural abilities," Dante said from behind her, his voice tight with tension. "Including curses." Luna turned to face him, taking in the careful way he held himself apart from her despite the mate bond pulling them together like magnets. For 3 days, they'd been working side by side to establish their medical research empire and expose council corruption, but Dante had been maintaining physical distance with the discipline of someone fighting his own nature. "The Blackthorne curse," Luna said. "It wasn't a question." Dante nodded grimly. 7 generations of my family have lost their mates during blood moon cycles. My great-great-grandfather's mate was killed by territorial rivals. My great-grandfather's mate died in a supernatural plague that only affected her bloodline. My grandfather's mate died in a car accident that wasn't really an accident, Luna finished, understanding flooding through her. Like my parents. "The curse doesn't create the threats," Dante explained, moving to the window but careful not to get close enough to touch her. "It amplifies existing dangers until they become lethal. Every enemy we've made, every council operative who wants to eliminate us, every supernatural faction that sees us as a threat, tonight, they're all going to be stronger, faster, more desperate." Luna felt her silver wolf stirring beneath her skin, responding to the supernatural energy radiating from the blood moon. "So we hide? Wait for it to pass." "That's what I thought," Dante said quietly, "until Marcus made his discovery." As if summoned by his name, Luna's brother appeared in the office doorway, his arms full of research files and his eyes bright with the kind of scientific excitement that had once made him want to become an astrophysicist before his illness derailed those dreams. "Luna, you need to see this," Marcus said, spreading papers across Dante's massive desk. "I've been analyzing the genetic markers that trigger supernatural transformations, and I found something impossible." Luna moved to examine her brother's research, her enhanced vision immediately picking up patterns in the DNA sequencing data that would have taken human scientists years to identify. "These mutation sequences, they're not random." "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. "Every supernatural transformation follows specific genetic modifications that appear to be artificially induced. The Werewolf Council hasn't been managing supernatural society, they've been creating it." The implications hit Luna like a physical blow. "You're saying werewolves aren't a natural species?" "I'm saying the current werewolf population shows clear signs of genetic engineering," Marcus corrected. "The original wolves, like your silver wolf bloodline, appear to be naturally occurring. But the vast majority of modern werewolves carry genetic markers that suggest deliberate manipulation." Dante moved to study the research data, his alpha instincts making him process the tactical implications immediately. A manufactured species would be easier to control than a natural one. And easier to eliminate if they ever became inconvenient, Luna added, her scientific mind racing through the possibilities. Marcus, do you have data on when these genetic modifications began? Marcus flipped to another section of his research. Best estimates put the initial modifications at approximately 300 years ago, with accelerated implementation over the past century. But Luna, there's something else. He pulled up a genetic comparison chart that made Luna's blood run cold. The Blackthorne family curse isn't supernatural. It's genetic. Someone has been systematically poisoning your bloodline for 7 generations, using compounds that become lethal when exposed to blood moon energy. The revelation reframed everything Luna thought she understood about their situation. The curse wasn't ancient magic or divine punishment. It was biological warfare targeting a specific genetic lineage. Who would have the resources and knowledge to maintain a 7-generation assassination program? Luna asked, though she was already beginning to suspect the answer. The same organization that's been genetically engineering werewolves for 3 centuries, Dante said grimly. The Council isn't just manipulating supernatural society, they've been creating and controlling it from the beginning. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the building. Emergency lighting bathed the penthouse in pulsing red that matched the blood moon's glow, and Luna's enhanced hearing picked up sounds of battle echoing from the lower floors. Defensive positions, Dante ordered, his alpha voice carrying enough authority to make Luna's wolf respond automatically. They're coming for us. How many? Luna asked, her body already beginning the shift toward partial transformation as adrenaline flooded her system. Too many, Marcus reported from a computer terminal that showed building security feeds. Council enforcement teams, but also something else. The signatures don't match any known supernatural species. Luna studied the security monitors and felt her silver wolf recoil in instinctive terror. The figures moving through the building's lower levels appeared human at first glance, but their movements were wrong. Too fluid, too coordinated, as if they were sharing a collective consciousness rather than acting as individuals. Genetic constructs, Luna realized with growing horror. They're not just engineering werewolves, they're creating entirely artificial species. The elevator chimed with incongruous cheerfulness, and the doors opened to reveal Dr. Voss, the council operative who had tried to capture Luna at the hospital. But something was different about him now. His eyes held a metallic sheen that reflected the blood moon's light, and when he smiled, his teeth appeared to be made of some kind of crystalline material. "Good evening," Dr. Voss said conversationally, stepping into the penthouse with the confidence of someone who knew he held all the advantages. "I hope you've enjoyed your brief experiment in corporate rebellion." Dr. Voss, Dante said, moving to place himself between the council operative and Luna. "I assume you're here to make us an offer we can't refuse." "Actually, I'm here to clean up a rather embarrassing mistake," Dr. Voss replied. "You see, the council never intended for Ms. Ashworth to survive her transformation into a silver wolf. Those abilities were supposed to manifest posthumously, allowing us to harvest her genetic material without the inconvenience of dealing with a living, thinking individual." Luna felt rage building in her chest like molten metal. "You've been planning to murder me since I was born." "Since before you were born, actually," Dr. Voss confirmed with academic interest. "Your parents' reproduction was carefully monitored and encouraged. We needed a subject with specific genetic markers, raised in controlled circumstances, exposed to particular environmental triggers at precise developmental stages." "The orphanage," Luna breathed, pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. "My childhood, the scholarships, even getting the job at Ashworth Medical, it was all orchestrated." "A 26-year experiment in controlled supernatural development," Dr. Voss agreed. "And you've performed admirably. Your healing abilities exceed our most optimistic projections. Your genetic material shows perfect compatibility with our enhancement protocols, and your emotional responses to various stimuli have provided invaluable data about silver wolf psychology." Marcus had been quietly working at his computer terminal throughout this conversation, but now he looked up with an expression of scientific fascination and moral horror. You're talking about my sister like she's a laboratory animal. From our perspective, that's exactly what she is, Dr. Voss said matter-of-factly. A very valuable laboratory animal whose continued independent existence threatens decades of careful planning. Luna felt her silver wolf transformation beginning whether she wanted it or not, triggered by the level of rage coursing through her system. But this time, the change felt different, more controlled, more purposeful, as if her supernatural nature was finally operating at full capacity. Silver fur rippled across her skin, but she maintained human form and consciousness, creating a hybrid state that combined human intelligence with supernatural power. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made the penthouse's windows vibrate. Dr. Voss, Luna said with deadly calm, I have a question for you. Which is? Luna smiled, letting her newly manifested fangs show. How exactly did you plan to harvest genetic material from a silver wolf who doesn't want to be harvested? The question hung in the air for exactly 1 second before Luna moved with supernatural speed, crossing the distance between them faster than human eyes could track. But Dr. Voss was ready for her, his own transformation revealing that he wasn't entirely werewolf anymore. His body shifted into something that was part wolf, part machine, part something else entirely. Crystalline claws extended from his fingertips. His skin took on a metallic sheen that reflected the blood moon's light, and when he spoke, his voice carried electronic undertones that suggested artificial vocal cords. Enhanced Council Operative, Dr. Voss announced as they grappled across the penthouse office. We learned long ago that biological limitations could be overcome through technological integration. Luna realized she was fighting something that had been designed specifically to counter silver wolf abilities, a genetic construct built to hunt and kill creatures like her. But she also realized that the Council had made one critical miscalculation. They'd built their weapon to fight a traditional silver wolf. They had no idea what happened when a silver wolf was backed by an alpha mate, a brilliant brother, and a blood moon that amplified all supernatural connections. Dante, Luna called mentally as she dodged crystalline claws that could probably slice through steel. I need you to trust me completely. Always, Dante replied without hesitation. Then activate our mate bond at full power. I think I know how to break the curse and take down the Council simultaneously. Luna, the blood moon makes the curse lethal. The blood moon makes everything more powerful, Luna corrected, ducking a blow that would have decapitated her. Including us. She felt Dante's reluctance warring with his trust in her abilities. Then the mate bond flared to life, with enough force to make every supernatural being in the building stagger under the psychic pressure. Luna's silver wolf abilities exploded outward, enhanced by alpha energy and blood moon amplification until she felt like a living conduit for supernatural power. But instead of trying to overwhelm Dr. Voss through brute force, she did something that no one expected. She healed him. Silver wolf energy flooded into the Council operative's hybrid biology, seeking out every artificial modification and genetic enhancement he'd undergone. But instead of attacking the foreign elements, Luna's healing abilities began to reverse them, stripping away technological integrations, dissolving chemical modifications, restoring his original human genetics. Dr. Voss screamed as decades of Council enhancements were systematically removed from his biology, leaving him increasingly human and increasingly vulnerable. Within minutes, he collapsed to the penthouse floor as an ordinary man whose only supernatural ability was a very thorough understanding of how badly he'd been manipulated. Impossible, he gasped, staring at his now normal hands in shock. The Council's modifications are irreversible. For anyone except a silver wolf operating at full power, Luna said, standing over him with silver fur still rippling beneath her skin. Turns out healing abilities work both ways. I can enhance supernatural nature or restore original biology, depending on what the individual needs most. Marcus was staring at her with scientific fascination. Luna, do you realize what this means? If you can reverse genetic modifications, I can free every werewolf the Council has been manipulating for 3 centuries, Luna finished. including breaking whatever genetic poison they've been using to maintain the Blackthorne curse. She turned to Dante, who was watching her with an expression of awe and something that looked like the beginning of hope. Are you ready to find out what happens when 7 generations of artificial curse meets one very angry silver wolf? Dante's smile was fierce and proud. I've been ready for that fight my entire life. Outside the penthouse windows, the blood moon reached its zenith, bathing Seattle in crimson light that made everything look like it was painted in silver and shadow. But for the first time in generations, Luna felt like the supernatural forces arrayed against them might not be quite as overwhelming as they'd seemed. The council had spent centuries building a system of control based on genetic manipulation and artificial curses. Tonight, they were about to learn what happened when that system met a silver wolf who refused to be controlled by anyone. The silver wolf healing energy that flowed through Luna felt like liquid lightning as she placed her hands on Dante's chest, seeking out the genetic markers that had cursed his bloodline for 7 generations. The blood moon's crimson light streamed through the penthouse windows, amplifying every supernatural ability in the building until the air itself seemed to crackle with power. I can feel it, Luna murmured, her consciousness diving deep into Dante's genetic structure with a precision that would have been impossible without her silver wolf abilities. The poison is woven into your DNA like a virus, but it's artificial. Someone has been systematically introducing genetic modifications designed to trigger lethal reactions during blood moon cycles. Dante stood perfectly still under her touch, but Luna could feel his tension through their mate bond. Decades of expecting to lose everything he loved, trained into his very bones by watching his family members suffer the same fate generation after generation. Can you remove it? Marcus asked from his position at the computer terminal, where he was monitoring the building's security systems and tracking the genetic constructs that Dr. Voss had brought with him. I think so, Luna said, silver energy beginning to pulse beneath her palms. But I need to understand the delivery mechanism first. How has the council been maintaining this curse for 200 years? She dove deeper into Dante's genetic memory. Using silver wolf abilities, she was still discovering to trace the artificial modifications back to their source. What she found made her stomach turn with disgust and admiration for the council's long-term planning. They've been using environmental triggers, Luna realized. Specific chemical compounds introduced into the food supply, water sources, even the air conditioning systems in buildings where Blackthorne family members live and work. Every generation has been systematically poisoned from birth. That's why the curse manifests differently each time, Dante said, understanding flooding his voice. It's not magic. It's adaptive biotechnology designed to exploit whatever vulnerabilities each individual develops during their lifetime. Luna nodded grimly. Your great-grandfather's mate died from a respiratory condition because she lived in an area with specific atmospheric pollutants. Your grandfather's mate died in a car accident because the poison affected her neurological responses to stress. Each death was tailored to appear natural while serving the council's purposes. Marcus looked up from his computer screen with growing alarm. Luna, we have a problem. The genetic constructs are moving through the building systematically, and they're not just hunting us. They're collecting biological samples from every surface we've touched. They want Luna's genetic material, Dante realized, his alpha instincts immediately shifting to protective mode. Even if they can't capture her alive, they can still harvest enough DNA to continue their experiments. Luna felt her silver wolf responding to the threat with predatory fury, but she forced herself to maintain focus on the healing process. Almost there, she murmured, her energy finding the core genetic modifications that maintained the Blackthorne curse. But Marcus, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Access the building's atmospheric controls, Luna instructed, never taking her hands off Dante's chest. If the council has been using environmental poisoning for 2 centuries, they've probably been monitoring and adjusting the chemical composition of any building where we spend significant time. Marcus's fingers flew over the keyboard, his enhanced intelligence allowing him to navigate complex building systems with ease. Oh my God, he breathed after a few minutes. Luna, the air conditioning system has been introducing trace amounts of 17 different chemical compounds, all designed to amplify supernatural stress responses. Can you reverse it? I can do better than that, Marcus said with grim satisfaction. I can flood the building with silver wolf healing essence synthesized from the atmospheric processors. If those genetic constructs are hunting us through scent tracking, they're about to get a very unpleasant surprise. Luna felt the moment when Dante's curse began to dissolve under her touch. Genetic poisons that had been woven into his family's DNA for generations, simply unraveling like thread pulled from cloth. The process was easier than she'd expected, as if her silver wolf abilities had been specifically designed to counter this type of artificial modification. But as the curse broke, Luna felt something else flowing between them through the mate bond. Memories that weren't her own, emotions that belonged to generations of Blackthorne alphas who had loved and lost under the shadow of supernatural manipulation. She saw Dante's father holding his dying mate, felt his grandfather's rage as he realized his wife's death hadn't been an accident, experienced his great-grandfather's desperate attempts to break free from patterns he couldn't understand. 7 generations of love and loss, all orchestrated by the same organization that had been manipulating her own family. It's done, Luna said finally, pulling her hands back from Dante's chest. The genetic modifications have been removed. Your bloodline is free. Dante stared at her with wonder and something that looked like the beginning of hope. You're sure? I'm sure, Luna confirmed, then smiled with predatory satisfaction. And now that we understand how the council operates, we can turn their own methods against them. The building's air conditioning system hummed to life with new purpose, and Luna caught the scent of silver wolf healing essence beginning to circulate through the atmospheric controls. But instead of the gentle, restorative energy she'd been producing manually, this felt different, more aggressive, designed not to heal but to reveal. What exactly are you doing? Dante asked, his alpha senses picking up the change in atmospheric composition. Forcing every genetically modified supernatural in the building to revert to their original biology, Luna explained. The council's constructs are designed to hunt silver wolves, but they're not designed to survive having their artificial enhancements stripped away. The effects were immediate and dramatic. From the building's security feeds, they could see council operatives throughout the facility beginning to collapse as decades of genetic modifications were systematically removed from their systems. The smooth coordination that had marked them as artificial constructs dissolved into confusion and panic as their enhanced abilities disappeared. They're falling back, Marcus reported with satisfaction. The ones who can still move are retreating toward the building's exits. But Luna's enhanced hearing picked up something that made her silver wolf instincts scream warnings. They're not all retreating, she said, moving toward the penthouse windows. Something's coming up. The elevator dinged with cheerful normalcy, and the doors opened to reveal someone Luna had never expected to see, an elderly woman in a perfectly tailored business suit, her silver hair arranged in an elegant chignon, and her pale blue eyes carrying the kind of authority that came from decades of absolute power. Good evening, the woman said, stepping into the penthouse with the confidence of someone who owned everything she surveyed. I'm Director Catherine Ashworth, Luna's grandmother, and I believe it's time we had a family conversation. Luna felt the world tilt on its axis. That's impossible. My grandmother died when I was 5. Your human grandmother died when you were 5, Catherine corrected gently. I, however, have been very much alive and monitoring your development from a distance for the past 21 years. Marcus stared at the woman who claimed to be their grandmother with scientific fascination and growing horror. The genetic modifications, he realized. You've been part of the council experiments from the beginning. Catherine's smile was sharp and predatory. I haven't been part of the council experiments, dear boy. I've been running them. The revelation hit Luna like a physical blow. You're saying our own grandmother has been orchestrating our suffering for our entire lives? I'm saying I've been protecting you from forces that would have killed you outright, Catherine replied. The Werewolf Council wanted to harvest your abilities when you were a child. I convinced them that a more sophisticated approach would yield better results. Luna felt her silver wolf responding to the emotional trauma with defensive aggression, but something in Catherine's sense stopped her from attacking immediately. Beneath the artificial modifications and genetic enhancements, she could detect traces of familiar pheromones, family bonds that couldn't be entirely erased by supernatural manipulation. "You really are our grandmother," Luna whispered. "I really am," Catherine confirmed. "And I really have spent the past quarter-century ensuring your survival while gathering the resources necessary to bring down the council from within." Dante moved to Luna's side, his alpha instincts clearly struggling with whether to protect his mate from a potential threat or trust the family member who had apparently been playing a decades-long deception game. "Prove it," Dante said simply. Catherine reached into her suit jacket and withdrew a photograph that made Luna's breath catch. It showed her parents on their wedding day, young and happy and clearly unaware that their lives were being monitored by supernatural forces. But in the background, barely visible behind a pillar, stood a woman who was unmistakably a younger version of Catherine. "I was there when your parents fell in love," Catherine said softly. "I was there when you were born. And I was there when they were murdered, though I was unable to prevent it despite my position within the council hierarchy." Luna studied the photograph with her enhanced vision, looking for any sign of deception or manipulation. But the emotional resonance she felt through her silver wolf abilities suggested that Catherine was telling the truth, or at least a version of it. "What do you want from us?" Luna asked finally. Catherine's smile turned genuinely warm for the first time since she'd arrived. "I want to help you destroy the organization that murdered my son and daughter-in-law. I want to free every supernatural being who's been genetically manipulated by council experiments. And I want to give my granddaughter the tools she needs to reshape supernatural society according to her own vision, rather than ancient power structures that serve only the few." She gestured toward the windows, where the blood moon was beginning to set, taking its crimson influence with it. "The council operates from a facility beneath the Seattle underground, using geothermal energy and lunar positioning to amplify their genetic modification procedures. They have holding cells containing dozens of supernatural beings who are being used as test subjects, research labs developing bioweapons that could eliminate entire species, and a command center that coordinates council operations across North America." "And you know how to get us inside," Dante said, understanding the implications. "I know how to get us inside without triggering their defenses," Catherine corrected. "But more importantly, I know how to help Luna use her silver wolf abilities to reverse every genetic modification the council has performed over the past 3 centuries. Luna felt her pulse quicken as the scope of what Catherine was proposing became clear. "You're talking about freeing thousands of supernatural beings who don't even know they've been manipulated." "I'm talking about giving those beings the choice to remain as they are or return to their original natures," Catherine clarified. "Some werewolves may prefer their enhanced abilities. Others may want to return to purely human genetics. The point is that the choice should be theirs, not the council's." Marcus looked up from his computer terminal with growing excitement. "Luna, if we could synthesize your healing abilities on that scale, we could revolutionize not just supernatural medicine but human medicine as well. Genetic diseases, autoimmune conditions, even aging itself might become treatable." Luna felt the weight of possibility and responsibility settling on her shoulders like a mantle. Everything she believed about her life, her family, her abilities had been rewritten in the span of a few hours. But underneath the shock and uncertainty, she felt something she hadn't experienced since her parents' death: hope. "Grandmother," Luna said, testing the word on her tongue, "if we do this, if we attack the council's stronghold and attempt to free their prisoners, we're going to be declaring war on the most powerful supernatural organization in North America." Catherine's laugh carried hints of the same predatory satisfaction that Luna recognized in her own silver wolf nature. "My dear granddaughter, I've been at war with the council for 25 years. You're just finally strong enough to join the fight." Luna looked at Dante, whose storm-gray eyes held love and determination, and something that looked like the beginning of hope. She looked at Marcus, whose brilliant mind was already calculating the logistics of the most ambitious rescue operation in supernatural history. And she looked at Catherine, the grandmother she'd thought was dead, who had apparently spent decades positioning herself to bring down the system that had destroyed their family. Outside the penthouse windows, the blood moon was setting, but Luna felt like she was finally seeing clearly for the first time in her life. "All right," Luna said, feeling her silver wolf power humming with anticipation. "Let's go free some prisoners and bring down a government." The Seattle Underground had been a tourist attraction for decades, a network of abandoned streets and storefronts beneath the modern city, remnants of a bygone era when the entire downtown district had been raised by 20 feet to solve flooding problems. But as Luna followed her grandmother Catherine through passages that definitely didn't appear on any tour map, she realized that the official version of the Underground's history was carefully sanitized. The council established their primary facility here in 1889, Catherine explained as they navigated tunnels that seemed to stretch far deeper than the documented levels. The Great Seattle Fire provided perfect cover for excavating additional chambers, and the city's reconstruction allowed them to integrate supernatural architecture with human infrastructure. Luna's enhanced senses picked up scents that made her silver wolf recoil with instinctive terror. Antiseptic chemicals mixed with pain and fear, the metallic tang of blood both fresh and old, and underneath it all, something that smelled like despair given physical form. "How many prisoners?" Dante asked, his alpha voice carrying carefully controlled fury. "Approximately 80 supernatural beings in various stages of genetic modification," Catherine replied grimly. "Werewolves, vampires, fae, and several species I don't have names for. The council has been expanding their experimental parameters over the past decade." Marcus, who was carrying a backpack full of sophisticated equipment that looked like a fusion between medical instruments and supernatural artifacts, consulted a hand-drawn map that Catherine had provided. "According to this layout, the holding cells are in the deepest section, approximately 200 feet below street level." "And the genetic modification laboratories?" Luna asked, studying the map over her brother's shoulder. "Adjacent to the holding area," Catherine confirmed. "The council prefers to conduct their experiments close to their test subjects. More convenient for sample collection and observation." Luna felt her silver wolf responding to the casual way Catherine discussed the council's atrocities, predatory instincts demanding immediate action against anyone who would torture supernatural beings for scientific advancement. But she forced herself to maintain control. Losing her temper now would compromise their mission and endanger the very people they were trying to save. The tunnel they were following opened into a vast underground chamber that defied architectural logic. The space was easily the size of a football stadium, with curved walls that seemed to be carved from solid rock and a ceiling that disappeared into shadows despite the advanced lighting systems positioned throughout the complex. "Welcome to the heart of council operations," Catherine said with bitter satisfaction. "This facility processes more supernatural prisoners than every other council installation combined." Luna stared at the complex with growing horror and determination. Multiple levels were visible from their current position, connected by walkways and elevator systems that buzzed with constant activity. She could see figures in white lab coats moving between buildings, vehicles that looked like a fusion between ambulances and armored cars, and security checkpoints that definitely weren't designed to keep humans out. "Guards?" Dante asked, his alpha instincts automatically assessing threats. "Approximately 50 enhanced operatives at any given time," Catherine replied. "Plus automated defense systems, supernatural containment fields, and emergency protocols that can seal the entire facility within minutes." Marcus was staring at the complex with scientific fascination and moral horror. "This isn't just a research facility," he realized. "It's a supernatural processing plant. They're treating living beings like industrial raw materials." "Exactly," Catherine confirmed. "The council's ultimate goal isn't just to control supernatural society, it's to standardize it. They want every werewolf, vampire, and fae to conform to specific genetic templates that make them easier to monitor and manage." Luna felt her silver wolf abilities stirring in response to the supernatural distress signals emanating from the facility below. Even at this distance, she could sense the pain and fear of dozens of imprisoned beings, their natural abilities suppressed by whatever containment methods the council was using. "I can feel them," Luna whispered, her voice carrying new harmonics that made the tunnel walls resonate like tuning forks. "They're suffering. Which is why we're going to get them out," Dante said firmly, his storm-gray eyes beginning to glow with alpha power. Catherine, what's our best approach for minimizing casualties while maximizing prisoner liberation? Catherine's smile was sharp and predatory. Simple. We're going to walk in through the front door and tell them that Luna has agreed to surrender herself in exchange for the prisoner's freedom. Luna stared at her grandmother in shock. We're going to what? Think about it, Catherine said, her expression turning serious. What does the council want more than anything else? Your genetic material and your cooperation with their research programs. If you appear to surrender voluntarily, they'll focus all their attention on securing you while dropping their guard around the existing prisoners. And then, Marcus asked, though Luna could see that his brilliant mind was already working through the tactical implications. Then Luna uses her Silver Wolf abilities to remove every genetic modification the Council has ever performed, Catherine explained. Not just on the prisoners, but on every enhanced operative in the facility. When their artificial abilities disappear, the balance of power shifts dramatically in our favor. Dante was shaking his head before Catherine finished speaking. Absolutely not. I'm not letting Luna walk into a council stronghold and pretend to surrender herself for experimentation. It's not your choice, Luna said quietly, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. I'm not just your mate, Dante. I'm a silver wolf with abilities that could free hundreds of supernatural beings from council manipulation. This is exactly the kind of situation my powers were meant to address. Luna. No, Luna interrupted, feeling her silver wolf nature responding to the challenge with steel-spine determination. I've spent my entire life being protected, hidden, kept safe while other people suffered. My parents died trying to escape this system. My brother nearly died because of their experiments. How many more people have to suffer while I stay hidden and safe? She moved to the edge of the overlook, studying the council facility with new eyes. Instead of seeing an impregnable fortress, she began to identify weaknesses. Ventilation systems that could carry Silver Wolf healing essence, communication networks that could be disrupted, containment fields that relied on technology instead of natural supernatural barriers. I can do this, Luna said with growing confidence. My abilities are specifically designed to counter genetic modification and artificial enhancement. And if Catherine is right about the Council's priorities, they'll be so focused on securing me that they won't realize what's happening until it's too late. Marcus joined her at the overlook, his expression showing the same mixture of fear and determination that Luna felt. What do you need from me? Technical support, Luna replied immediately. If I'm going to reverse genetic modifications on this scale, I'll need someone monitoring the process and making real-time adjustments to prevent system overload. And from me? Dante asked, his alpha voice carrying undertones of barely controlled protective instincts. Luna turned to face her mate, seeing the love and terror warring in his storm-gray eyes. I need you to trust me, she said simply. And I need you to be ready to fight our way out when the council realizes they've been played. Catherine was watching this exchange with an expression that looked like pride mixed with ancient grief. There's something else you should know before we proceed, she said quietly. The council's leader, Director Magnus Volkov, is Scarlett's grandfather. He's also the one who personally ordered your parents' assassination. Luna felt her silver wolf responding to this information with cold, predatory satisfaction. Then I'll get to look him in the eye when I destroy everything he's built. The plan they developed was audacious in its simplicity. Catherine would contact the facility using her council credentials and announce that she'd successfully convinced Luna to surrender in exchange for the prisoner's release. While the council prepared to receive their prized specimen, Marcus would infiltrate the facility's technical systems and position himself to monitor Luna's use of her abilities. Dante would coordinate external security and be ready to provide extraction support when the mission went kinetic. Remember, Catherine said as they prepared to separate, the council has been planning to acquire your abilities for over 20 years. They're going to be overconfident, convinced that they finally have everything under control. Use that arrogance against them. Luna nodded, feeling her silver wolf power humming beneath her skin like a caged lightning storm. What happens after we free the prisoners? The council isn't going to just accept defeat and disappear. After we free the prisoners, Catherine said with grim satisfaction. We're going to use the Council's own infrastructure to broadcast the truth about their genetic manipulation programs to every supernatural community in North America. Let them try to maintain control when their own people know exactly how they've been violated. As they moved toward the facility's main entrance, Luna realized that everything in her life had been leading to this moment. The orphaned pharmaceutical researcher was gone, replaced by someone who understood that real power came not from hiding in safety, but from using her abilities to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The Council had spent centuries building a system based on control through genetic manipulation and fear. Tonight, they were going to learn what happened when that system met a silver wolf who refused to be controlled by anyone. The Council facility's reception area looked like a fusion between a high-end medical clinic and a maximum security prison, with marble floors, expensive artwork, and security checkpoints that scanned for both weapons and supernatural abilities. Luna walked through the main entrance with her hands visibly empty and her head held high, every inch the surrendering captive despite the silver wolf power humming beneath her skin like contained thunder. Director Magnus Volkov waited in the central reception area, a tall man with silver hair and pale blue eyes that held the kind of cold intelligence Luna associated with apex predators. He was flanked by a dozen enhanced operatives whose sense carried the artificial markers of genetic modification, and when he smiled at Luna's approach, his expression held the satisfaction of someone who had finally acquired a prize he'd been hunting for decades. "Ms. Ashworth," Magnus said, his voice carrying a cultured accent that couldn't quite hide the predatory undertones. "How delightful to finally meet you in person. Your grandmother has told me so much about your unique capabilities." Luna forced herself to maintain the appearance of nervous compliance while her enhanced senses mapped the facility around them. Security cameras tracked her every movement, supernatural containment fields hummed with power throughout the building, and she could detect at least 30 enhanced operatives positioned at strategic points. But she could also sense something else, the desperate hope emanating from the holding areas 2 levels below, where supernatural prisoners were beginning to realize that something unusual was happening. "Director Volkov," Luna said, allowing her voice to carry just enough fear to be convincing. "I understand you have a proposal for me." "Indeed I do," Magnus confirmed, gesturing toward an elevator that would carry them deeper into the facility. "You cooperate with our research programs, and we release the volunteers currently participating in our genetic modification studies." "All of them?" Luna asked, stepping into the elevator as if she hadn't noticed the armed guards moving to surround her. "All of them," Magnus confirmed. "Though I should mention that some have undergone modifications that make immediate release challenging. We'll need time to develop reversal procedures." Luna felt her silver wolf responding to the lie with cold fury, but she maintained her facade of cooperation. "I understand. How long do you estimate the research will take?" "Oh, no more than 5 or 10 years, Magnus said casually as the elevator descended toward the laboratory levels. "Genetic mapping is such delicate work, you understand." The elevator opened to reveal a corridor lined with observation windows that looked into cells containing supernatural beings in various stages of modification. Luna's enhanced vision immediately cataloged the horrors she was seeing: werewolves whose transformations had been frozen in partial states, vampires whose feeding abilities had been artificially enhanced to the point of constant agony, fae whose connection to natural magic had been severed and replaced with technological implants. "Impressive, isn't it?" Magnus said, noting her fascination. 3 centuries of careful research into supernatural enhancement and optimization. We've made remarkable progress towards standardizing supernatural abilities across species." Luna forced herself to nod appreciatively, while her silver wolf screamed for immediate violence. "The applications must be extraordinary." "Limitless," Magnus agreed, leading her toward a central laboratory that could have accommodated a small aircraft. "Imagine werewolves whose transformations are controlled by remote activation. Vampires whose feeding requirements can be regulated through pharmaceutical intervention. Fae whose magical abilities operate according to technological parameters rather than chaotic natural forces." They entered the laboratory, and Luna found herself surrounded by equipment that represented the pinnacle of supernatural scientific advancement: genetic sequencing machines that incorporated mystical energy matrices, surgical instruments that could operate on both physical and spiritual levels, and containment systems that could hold beings whose abilities defied natural law. Of course, Magnus continued conversationally, we'll need to begin with some baseline testing to understand your current capabilities. Nothing invasive initially, just blood samples, genetic mapping, perhaps some controlled demonstrations of your healing abilities. Luna nodded as if considering the proposal, while her silver wolf abilities mapped every artificial enhancement in the room. Magnus himself carried modifications that went far beyond simple genetic optimization. His entire nervous system had been replaced with something that was part biological, part technological, designed to process information at superhuman speeds while maintaining emotional detachment from the suffering he orchestrated. I have one question, Luna said, moving closer to the central laboratory equipment. Which is? Luna smiled, letting her eyes begin to glow with silver wolf power. Did you really think I was stupid enough to walk into your facility without a plan? The change in atmosphere was immediate and dramatic. Magnus' expression shifted from confident satisfaction to alarmed realization, and every enhanced operative in the laboratory began moving toward combat positions. But Luna was already releasing Silver Wolf healing energy on a scale she'd never attempted before, targeting every artificial modification within a quarter-mile radius. The power flowed outward like a tsunami, seeking out genetic enhancements, technological implants, and chemical modifications with surgical precision. The effects were immediate and catastrophic for the Council's operations. Enhanced operatives throughout the facility began collapsing as their artificial abilities were stripped away. Security systems dependent on supernatural energy sources failed in cascading sequence, and containment fields holding supernatural prisoners simply disappeared. Impossible, Magnus breathed, his own modifications beginning to unravel under Luna's focused attention. The power requirements alone should kill me? Luna interrupted, her voice carrying new harmonics that made the laboratory equipment resonate in sympathy. That's the thing about Silver Wolf abilities, Director. We were designed to be used on this scale. Magnus' technological enhancements dissolved one by one, leaving him increasingly human and increasingly vulnerable. But instead of panic, his expression showed fascination and a hunger that went beyond scientific curiosity. Remarkable, he murmured, studying Luna with the intensity of someone witnessing a phenomenon that rewrote everything he thought he understood. Your capabilities exceed our most optimistic projections by several orders of magnitude. Which is why you're never going to get the chance to study them, Luna said, expanding her healing field to encompass the entire facility. Throughout the underground complex, supernatural prisoners were discovering that their containment systems had failed and their natural abilities were returning. Luna could feel their confusion transforming into hope, then into fury as they realized the scope of what had been done to them. The facility's alarm systems began blaring warnings about containment breaches, but Luna knew the Council's enhanced security forces were in no condition to respond. Her healing abilities had stripped away every artificial advantage they developed over centuries of genetic manipulation. Luna, Dante's voice echoed in her mind, were picking up massive supernatural disturbances throughout the complex. Are you all right? Better than all right, Luna replied, feeling her Silver Wolf abilities operating at capacity, without strain or fatigue. The prisoners are free, and the Council's enhancements are history. Time for Phase 2. Which is? Luna smiled as Magnus backed away from her with growing alarm. Making sure they can never rebuild what we just destroyed. She reached out with her Silver Wolf senses, seeking the genetic templates and research data that represented centuries of Council experimentation. The information was stored in crystalline matrices that combined supernatural energy with advanced computing technology, designed to be indestructible under normal circumstances. But Luna's abilities weren't normal circumstances. Silver Wolf healing energy didn't just restore natural genetics. It could also cleanse supernatural corruption from any system it touched. She began systematically destroying every piece of research data, every genetic template, every technological enhancement the Council had developed. Stop, Magnus commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. You're destroying knowledge that took centuries to accumulate. Good, Luna said simply, watching as 300 years of research dissolved into harmless energy that dissipated into the earth beneath the facility. Some knowledge is too dangerous to exist. The laboratory around them began to shake as fundamental systems failed throughout the complex. Without supernatural enhancements to maintain structural integrity, the facility's deeper levels were becoming unstable. The tunnels are collapsing. Marcus's voice came through Luna's enhanced hearing as he coordinated prisoner evacuation from a safe distance. Luna, you need to get out of there now. But as Luna moved toward the exit, Magnus pulled out a weapon that made her silver wolf recoil with instinctive terror, a crystalline device that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, creating a void in reality that hurt to look at directly. Genetic disruptor, Magnus explained, his expression showing the fanatic satisfaction of someone with nothing left to lose. Designed specifically to neutralize silver wolf abilities. If I can't have your cooperation, I'll settle for your corpse. Luna felt the weapon's field affecting her supernatural abilities, creating discord in the silver wolf power that had been flowing so smoothly. The healing energy she'd been maintaining throughout the facility began to falter, and she realized that the freed prisoners would be vulnerable if she couldn't maintain her power output. But as Magnus raised the genetic disruptor, preparing to fire, the laboratory door exploded inward in a shower of metal and stone. Dante entered in full alpha wolf form, 8 feet of midnight black fury, whose presence immediately destabilized the weapon's targeting systems. Behind him came Catherine, her own supernatural abilities finally revealed as she shifted into a silver wolf form that matched Luna's, but carried the authority of decades more experience. And bringing up the rear was Marcus, who had apparently decided that coordinating from a distance wasn't sufficient for this family reunion. Grandfather, Catherine said with cold satisfaction as she faced Magnus across the collapsing laboratory. It's time to pay for 25 years of lies. Magnus stared at the assembled family with growing realization. You're all silver wolves. That's impossible. The bloodline was supposed to be extinct. The bloodline was hidden, Catherine corrected, waiting for the right moment to emerge and destroy everything you've built. Luna felt her silver wolf abilities stabilizing as the mate bond with Dante reinforced her power, and the family connection with Catherine and Marcus created resonance that amplified everyone's capabilities. Together, Luna said, looking at her mate, her grandmother, and her brother, "Let's finish this." The combined silver wolf healing energy they released was unlike anything the council facility had ever experienced. Centuries of genetic corruption, artificial enhancement, and supernatural manipulation were cleansed from the underground complex in a single, overwhelming pulse that left the surviving council operatives as ordinary humans with extraordinary questions about what they'd been serving. As the facility continued its structural collapse around them, Luna and her family fought their way toward the surface, carrying with them nearly 80 freed supernatural prisoners whose natural abilities had been restored and whose gratitude would form the foundation of a completely new approach to supernatural society. The Werewolf Council's 3-century reign of genetic manipulation was over. The age of supernatural freedom was just beginning. 2 weeks after the council facility's destruction, Luna stood in the emergency triage area of Seattle General Hospital, her silver wolf healing abilities working overtime to help supernatural beings who were still adjusting to freedom after decades of genetic manipulation. The werewolf on the gurney before her had been held by the council for 15 years, his transformation abilities so severely modified that he couldn't maintain either fully human or fully wolf form. Instead, he existed in a painful partial state that left him neither one thing nor the other, exactly the kind of systematic cruelty that made Luna's wolf snarl with protective fury. "Easy," Luna murmured, placing her hands on the patient's chest and feeling her silver wolf energy flowing into his corrupted genetics. "We're going to fix this. It might take time, but we're going to restore your natural abilities." The healing process was delicate work. Unlike the massive energy releases she'd used to destroy the council facility, individual treatment required precision and patience. Each person affected by council modifications carried unique genetic damage that needed to be addressed specifically. "How many more?" Luna asked Dr. Patricia Kim, who had volunteered to coordinate medical care for the freed prisoners. 43 still requiring intensive treatment, Dr. Kim replied, consulting her tablet. Plus another 120 who need ongoing monitoring to ensure their natural abilities stabilize properly. Luna nodded, wiping sweat from her forehead as she moved to the next patient, a young woman whose vampire transformation had been artificially accelerated, leaving her unable to control her feeding requirements. The Council's modifications had turned what should have been a gradual supernatural evolution into a constant state of hunger and pain. We need more space, Luna realized, looking around the hospital wing that had been hastily converted to accommodate supernatural medical needs. And more staff who understand the intersection between supernatural biology and conventional medicine. Already working on it, said Marcus, appearing with his ever-present tablet and an expression of determined excitement. I've been in contact with pharmaceutical companies across the country. Turns out, when you can prove that supernatural healing compounds work, everyone wants to invest in the research. Luna felt a familiar mix of pride and concern. Marcus had thrown himself into the medical research with the enthusiasm of someone who finally had the tools to make a real difference. But she worried about him pushing too hard, too fast. The werewolf transformation had enhanced his abilities, but it had also amplified his tendency toward obsessive focus. What kind of timeline are we looking at? Luna asked, checking on the vampire patient's progress as her healing energy began to stabilize the woman's modified genetics. 6 months for a dedicated facility, Marcus reported. 12 months for a full research institute with integrated supernatural and human medical programs. 2 years for international expansion if the preliminary results hold up. Luna's enhanced hearing picked up footsteps approaching with the measured confidence she associated with Dante's alpha presence. When she looked up, she found him standing in the doorway with an expression that mixed pride, concern, and something that looked like barely controlled possessiveness. You've been here for 18 hours straight, Dante observed, moving to her side with the fluid grace that always made her pulse quicken. Even silver wolves need rest. These people have been suffering for decades, Luna replied, though she could feel the exhaustion pulling at her supernatural abilities like weights. I can rest when they're stable. Luna, Dante said, his alpha voice carrying enough command to make her wolf pay attention. You can't heal everyone in North America in a single week. This is going to be a long-term effort that requires sustainable pacing. Luna wanted to argue, but she could see the truth in his storm gray eyes. Around the makeshift medical ward, she could see other healers, both supernatural and human, working with the same desperate intensity that had been driving her. Everyone wanted to undo the Council's damage immediately, but the scope of the problem required strategy rather than just determination. 2 more patients, Luna negotiated, feeling the mate bond humming with Dante's concern for her well-being. Then I'll take a break. 4 hours of actual sleep, Dante countered. Not meditation or resting your eyes while monitoring healing processes. Luna smiled despite her exhaustion. Have I mentioned that having an alpha mate can be occasionally irritating? Frequently, Dante replied with amusement. But you keep me around anyway. As Luna completed treatment for 2 more freed prisoners, a fae whose connection to natural magic had been severed and replaced with technological implants, and a werewolf whose pack bonds had been artificially redirected to the Council's command structure, she felt a growing sense of purpose that went beyond individual healing. Each person she helped represented not just a life restored, but a piece of evidence that supernatural and human medical knowledge could work together to achieve things neither could accomplish alone. The vampire's accelerated healing, combined with human pharmaceutical research, was yielding insights into cellular regeneration that could revolutionize cancer treatment. The fae's natural magic, when properly integrated with technological support systems, could enhance surgical precision in ways that seemed almost miraculous. Dr. Ashworth, said a voice behind her, formal and slightly nervous. Luna turned to see a woman in an expensive business suit, flanked by what looked like government security personnel. Her enhanced senses immediately identified the newcomer as human, but her bearing suggested the kind of authority that came from high-level political positions. I'm Senator Rebecca Walsh, Chair of the Senate Supernatural Affairs Committee, the woman said, extending her hand with professional confidence. I was hoping we could discuss the medical protocols you've been developing. Luna felt Dante's protective instincts flare through their mate bond, but she accepted the handshake with diplomatic calm. Senator Walsh, I assume you're here about the integration of supernatural abilities with conventional medicine. Among other things, Senator Walsh confirmed. There are concerns in Congress about the rapid pace of these developments and questions about regulatory oversight for treatments that fall outside traditional FDA approval processes. Luna exchanged a glance with Marcus, who had moved closer with the protective instincts their family seemed to share. Senator, with respect, the people in this facility have been suffering from genetic modifications that no traditional medicine can address. We're not experimenting. We're providing emergency medical care. I understand that, Senator Walsh said carefully. But some of my colleagues are concerned about the precedent this sets. If supernatural abilities can be used for medical treatment, what's to stop them from being weaponized? How do we ensure public safety when dealing with forces that conventional science doesn't fully understand? Luna felt her silver wolf responding to the implied threat with defensive energy, but she forced herself to maintain professional composure. Senator, would you like to meet some of the people we've helped? Hear their stories about what council genetic modification did to them and what restoration of their natural abilities has meant for their lives. Senator Walsh's expression shifted from political caution to genuine curiosity. That would be educational. Over the next 2 hours, Luna guided Senator Walsh through the medical facility, introducing her to freed prisoners who could articulate the difference between council manipulation and natural supernatural abilities. She met the werewolf whose transformation abilities had been restored, allowing him to shift cleanly between human and wolf forms for the first time in 15 years. She spoke with the vampire whose feeding requirements had been stabilized, eliminating the constant hunger that had made her existence a form of torture. Most importantly, she met Dr. Sarachin, a human oncologist who had volunteered for experimental treatment when conventional therapy failed to stop her aggressive brain cancer. The combination of silver wolf healing abilities and targeted supernatural pharmaceuticals had not only eliminated the cancer, but enhanced her cognitive abilities to the point where she was developing breakthrough treatments for neurological conditions. Dr. Chun, Senator Walsh said after hearing the woman's story, you volunteered for experimental treatment that combined supernatural abilities with conventional medicine. Weren't you concerned about unknown risks? Dr. Chen smiled with the calm confidence of someone who had faced death and come out stronger. Senator, I was dying. The conventional treatments had failed, and I had maybe 3 months left to live. Dr. Ashworth offered me a chance to not only survive, but to help develop treatments that could save other people facing the same diagnosis. That wasn't a risk, it was a gift. By the time Senator Walsh left the facility, her expression had shifted from political caution to something that looked like genuine support. Dr. Ashworth, she said as she prepared to leave, I think my committee needs to see this firsthand. Would you be willing to host a formal delegation next month? Of course, Luna replied, feeling a new kind of determination building in her chest. Senator, the world is changing. Supernatural and human communities are going to work together, whether the government supports it or not. The question is whether we do it with official oversight and public safety protocols, or whether we're forced to operate in shadows the way the council did. Senator Walsh nodded thoughtfully. I'll make sure my colleagues understand the difference. After the senator left, Luna found herself back in the emergency triage area, but this time as an observer rather than an active healer. The facility was running smoothly under Dr. Kim's coordination, with supernatural and human medical staff working together seamlessly. You know what this means, Marcus said, joining her at the observation window. If Congress supports what we're doing here, we could scale it nationally. Luna nodded, watching a werewolf nurse work alongside a human physician to treat a patient whose council modifications were finally responding to combined therapy. Not just nationally, internationally. There are council facilities and modified supernatural beings all over the world. The Blackthorne Ashworth Medical Institute, Dante said, appearing beside them with a kind of smile that suggested he'd been planning something. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Luna turned to stare at her mate. You're already thinking about institutional expansion? I'm thinking about building something that will last, Dante replied. Something that will ensure no supernatural being ever has to suffer council-style manipulation again, and no human has to face a medical condition we could treat if we just worked together. Luna felt her silver wolf purring with satisfaction as she looked around the facility where impossible healing was becoming routine, where supernatural and human medical professionals were learning from each other, where people who had been broken by systematic oppression were becoming whole again. All right, Luna said, feeling the weight of responsibility and the joy of purpose settling around her like a comfortable cloak. Let's change the world. 6 months later, the grand opening of the Blackthorne Ashworth Medical Institute drew supernatural and human dignitaries from around the globe. The gleaming new facility rose 47 stories above downtown Seattle, its architecture blending cutting-edge technology with natural elements that honored the supernatural beings it served. Luna stood in the executive conference room on the top floor, wearing a tailored suit that managed to look both professional and appropriately supernatural, watching through floor-to-ceiling windows as the celebration continued in the plaza below. Werewolves and humans mingled freely. Vampires consulted with human physicians about joint research projects, and Fey children played games that created tiny aurora displays in the afternoon sunlight. The European expansion is ahead of schedule, Marcus reported, entering with Catherine and Elena, his vampire fiancée, who had become the Institute's director of supernatural relations. London, Paris, and Amsterdam facilities will be operational within 3 months. The Tokyo location is requesting additional Silver Wolf synthesized compounds for their neural regeneration trials. And the council remnants? Luna asked, though the question carried less urgency than it would have months ago. Scattered and largely neutralized, Catherine confirmed. Without their genetic modification technology and enhanced operatives, most former council members have returned to their original communities. A few are actually working with us now. Turns out, when you give people their natural abilities back, they tend to be grateful rather than vengeful. Luna felt a familiar surge of pride mixed with cautious optimism. The world was changing faster than anyone had imagined possible. Medical conditions that had been death sentences were becoming manageable. Supernatural beings who had hidden their abilities for generations were contributing openly to human society. International cooperation between species was becoming commonplace rather than extraordinary. There's something else, Dante said, his voice carrying a note that made Luna's enhanced senses prick with attention. A delegation from the old council, the original supernatural governing body that existed before the genetic modification faction took control, has requested a formal meeting. Luna raised an eyebrow. To what end? They want to establish diplomatic relations, Catherine explained. Apparently, they've been operating in secret for centuries, protecting supernatural communities that refused to accept council modifications. Now that the modern council is gone, they're ready to work openly with organizations like ours. Which means, Marcus added with scientific excitement, access to supernatural knowledge and abilities that have been preserved in their original forms. Medical applications we've never imagined. Luna felt her silver wolf responding to the possibilities with eager anticipation. But she also felt the weight of responsibility that came with being the de facto leader of a movement that was reshaping supernatural society. Schedule the meeting, Luna decided. But make it clear that any cooperation has to respect the choices of individual supernatural beings. No more systems where people are controlled by governing bodies they didn't choose to join. As the afternoon meeting concluded and her family members dispersed to their various projects, Luna found herself alone with Dante in the conference room that had become the unofficial headquarters of their expanding medical empire. Regrets? Dante asked, moving to stand beside her at the windows that overlooked their transformed city. Luna considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, she'd been a frightened pharmaceutical researcher hiding her abilities and watching her brother die slowly. Now she was the head of an international medical institute, mate to a billionaire alpha, and possibly the most influential silver wolf in supernatural history. None, Luna said finally, feeling the truth of it settle into her bones. Though, I sometimes wonder What would have happened if you hadn't rejected me that night? Dante's arms settled around her waist with possessive warmth. We never would have discovered the Council's manipulation. Your brother would still be dying. Hundreds of supernatural beings would still be imprisoned and modified. Sometimes the most painful path leads to the most important destinations. Luna leaned into his strength, feeling the mate bond humming between them with contentment and shared purpose. Speaking of destinations, she said, a smile tugging at her lips, Dr. Chen wants to discuss a very interesting research proposal with us. Oh. She thinks she's found a way to extend the healing properties of silver wolf essence to address aging in both supernatural and human populations, Luna explained. Not immortality, but significantly extended healthy lifespans. She estimates we could be looking at therapeutic applications within 5 years. Dante stared at her with growing wonder. You're talking about revolutionizing human biology itself. I'm talking about giving people more time to live, love, and contribute to the world, Luna corrected. Whether they're human, werewolf, vampire, or something we haven't discovered yet. Outside the conference room windows, the Seattle skyline stretched toward mountains and ocean, a city transformed by the integration of supernatural and human communities. But Luna's attention was caught by movement on the Institute's roof garden, Marcus and Elena working together to calibrate equipment for their latest research project, their different species' abilities complementing each other perfectly. You know what the best part is? Luna said, watching her brother laugh at something Elena had said. We're not just healing people anymore. We're building a future where supernatural and human communities don't just coexist, they thrive together. Dante's smile carried the warmth of an alpha whose pack had grown beyond anything he'd imagined possible. Together, he agreed, his voice carrying the weight of promises kept and dreams fulfilled. As the sun set over their transformed world, Luna felt her silver wolf settling into perfect contentment. The frightened, rejected werewolf who had fled through Seattle's alleys was gone forever, replaced by someone who had learned that the most important transformations weren't physical. They were the changes you made in the world around you. Some love stories ended with a couple living happily ever after. The best ones ended with a couple creating a reality where everyone could live happily ever after. 1 year later, Luna stood in the same Seattle alley where she'd first transformed into her silver wolf form, but everything about the experience was different now. Instead of running from council operatives in the rain-soaked darkness, she was surrounded by family and friends celebrating the first anniversary of what history would remember as the supernatural liberation. The alley itself had been transformed into a memorial garden, with bioluminescent plants that responded to supernatural energy and carved stones bearing the names of every being who had died in council facilities. Moonlight, natural silver moonlight, not the blood-red glow of crisis, filtered through the canopy above, making Luna's silver for shimmer as she maintained her hybrid form. Hard to believe it's only been a year, Marcus said, raising a glass of champagne that sparkled with traces of healing essence, one of the many innovations that had emerged from the Medical Institute's research. Sometimes it feels like we've lived several lifetimes since that night. Luna smiled, accepting her own glass while maintaining her partial transformation. She'd learned to control the shift so precisely that she could remain in hybrid form for hours, combining human intelligence with supernatural abilities in a way that felt completely natural. Several lifetimes, and then some. Dante agreed, his arms settling around Luna's waist with the comfortable possessiveness of a mate bond that had only grown stronger over time. Though I have to admit, some of those lifetimes have been more stressful than others. They were referring to the congressional hearings that had dominated the spring, followed by the establishment of the Department of Supernatural Affairs, the integration protocols for former council prisoners, and the ongoing diplomatic negotiations with supernatural communities worldwide. Not to mention dealing with the genetic purity movement, which had required several months of careful counterintelligence work to neutralize. The stress was worth it, Catherine said, joining their small circle with her own champagne and the satisfied expression of someone who had finally seen justice served. Did you see the latest statistics from the Medical Institute? Luna nodded, though the numbers still seemed almost too good to be true. Over the past year, They'd successfully treated more than 3,000 patients using integrated supernatural and conventional medicine. Genetic disorders that had been considered death sentences were now manageable conditions. Traumatic injuries that would have resulted in permanent disability were fully healed within weeks. Mental health conditions that had resisted decades of therapy responded dramatically to treatments that addressed both neurochemical and supernatural aspects of psychology. And the international expansion? Marcus asked, his enthusiasm evident despite his attempt at professional composure. Facilities opening in London, Tokyo, and Sao Paulo within the next 6 months, Catherine reported. Plus research partnerships with the Vampire Collective's medical researchers and the Fae Court's natural healing specialists. Luna felt a familiar surge of pride and wonder. What had started as a desperate attempt to save her dying brother had evolved into a global transformation of how supernatural and human communities approached health, science, and cooperation. Speaking of expansion, Dante said, his voice carrying a note that made Luna's enhanced senses prick with attention. There's something, Luna, and I wanted to share with everyone. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small velvet box that made Luna's heart skip several beats. They talked about formal ceremonies and traditional rituals, but between the congressional hearings, facility expansions, and ongoing security concerns, there hadn't been time for anything resembling a normal courtship progression. Dante, Luna breathed, staring at the box with a mixture of excitement and terror. I know we've already completed the mate bonding ritual, Dante said, dropping to one knee in the memorial garden while their family and friends formed a circle around them. And I know that supernatural law recognizes us as permanently paired. But I wanted to ask you properly, in front of the people we love, whether you'll marry me in the human tradition as well. He opened the box to reveal a ring that took Luna's breath away, a band of platinum and silver woven together, holding a stone that seemed to capture and reflect moonlight with supernatural intensity. But it wasn't a traditional diamond. Instead, the center stone appeared to be a crystallized sample of silver wolf healing essence, transformed into something that would last forever. It's beautiful, Luna whispered, extending her hand so Dante could slip the ring onto her finger. The moment the metal touched her skin, she felt their mate bond flare with renewed intensity, as if the physical symbol had amplified the supernatural connection between them. Is that a yes? Dante asked, his storm gray eyes holding love and hope and just a hint of alpha vulnerability. That's a yes, Luna confirmed, pulling him to his feet so she could kiss him properly, while their assembled friends and family erupted in cheers and applause. As they separated, Luna caught sight of something that made her silver wolf sing with perfect contentment. Marcus was holding hands with Dr. Elena Vasquez, the vampire physician who had joined their research team 6 months ago and who had apparently captured her brother's heart along with his scientific admiration. Catherine was deep in conversation with Director Hassan and several other members of their security team, planning what was probably either a wedding celebration or a response to some new threat. And everywhere Luna looked, she saw supernatural beings who had been freed from council manipulation living full, healthy lives alongside human friends and colleagues who accepted them completely. So, Marcus said, raising his champagne glass in a toast, to Luna and Dante, whose love story convinced the entire world that supernatural and human communities could build something beautiful together. To family, Catherine added, her voice carrying the weight of decades spent fighting for this moment. To the future, Elena contributed, her vampire-enhanced senses probably picking up details about the celebration that Luna couldn't even imagine. To second chances, Dante said, his eyes never leaving Luna's face. Luna felt her silver wolf abilities resonating with the happiness and hope surrounding them, creating gentle pulses of healing energy that made the memorial garden's bioluminescent plants glow brighter and the crystallized healing essence in her engagement ring sparkle like captured starlight. To love conquering everything, Luna said finally, then drank the champagne that tasted like moonlight and new beginnings. As the celebration continued around them, Luna realized that her story had never really been about being rejected and finding love again. It had been about discovering that some connections were too powerful for any force, whether ancient curses, genetic manipulation, or political extremism to destroy permanently. The werewolf who had fled through these same streets a year ago, broken and betrayed, and convinced she was destined to spend her life alone, was gone. In her place stood a silver wolf who had learned that real strength came not from hiding her abilities, but from using them to protect and heal others. 6 months later, Luna and Dante were married in a ceremony that combined werewolf traditions with human customs and attracted supernatural dignitaries from 6 continents. The wedding took place in the memorial garden where Dante had proposed, with bioluminescent flowers creating a canopy of living light above them and healing essence woven into every aspect of the celebration. Marcus served as best man, his own engagement to Elena having been announced just weeks earlier. Catherine officiated the ceremony, using her authority as a silver wolf elder to bind their union according to the oldest supernatural traditions. And when Luna and Dante exchanged vows, their voices carried harmonics that made every supernatural being present feel the depth of their connection. Their first child was born 18 months later, a daughter with Dante's storm gray eyes and Luna's silver hair, whose hybrid nature allowed her to shift between human and wolf forms almost from birth. She was followed by twin boys who inherited Marcus's intelligence and Luna's healing abilities, creating a family that represented everything the New World could offer. The Blackthorne Ashworth Medical Institute expanded to 12 facilities across 4 continents, with research programs that had eliminated dozens of previously incurable conditions and established the foundation for supernatural human cooperation in fields ranging from agriculture to space exploration. Luna's silver wolf abilities had been replicated through carefully synthesized compounds that could enhance healing in any supernatural being, while her research into genetic restoration had freed thousands of council victims and their descendants. The genetic purity movement collapsed when its members discovered that their own families had been affected by council modifications, leading to a period of reconciliation and healing that Luna found more satisfying than any victory through violence. And through it all, the mate bond between Luna and Dante only grew stronger, proving that some love stories were powerful enough to change the world. On quiet evenings, when the medical institute was closed and their children were asleep, Luna and Dante would sometimes return to the memorial garden where their new life had truly begun. They would sit among the bioluminescent flowers and remember the frightened, broken people they had been before they learned that being rejected could be the first step toward finding where you truly belonged. Luna's silver wolf would emerge under the moonlight, silver fur shimmering with contentment, while Dante's midnight black alpha form provided strength and protection. Together, they would run through the Seattle streets that had once been a place of terror and exile, now transformed into a city where supernatural and human families lived in harmony. The orphaned pharmaceutical researcher who had believed she was destined to spend her life alone was gone forever. In her place was Luna Blackthorne, silver wolf and healer, whose love story had proven that some mates were worth rewriting the entire world to protect. And as the moonlight painted their silver and black forms in shades of starlight and shadow, Luna knew that this was exactly the happily ever after she had been meant to find. Not perfect, not without challenges, but absolutely worth every moment of pain and growth that had brought them to this place. Some Werewolf Rejected Mate stories ended with the couple living happily ever after. The very best ones ended with the couple changing the world together, then living happily ever after in the better reality they had created. This was one of those stories. The end.